me up here. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, geeks and nerds and ambassadors everywhere, and welcome back to the Ambassadorial Wing. And hope y'all are having a wonderful Thursday night. We are back live with a brand new Modern Marvels review, and we are finally reaching the home stretch of the X-Men film franchise reviews. And tonight we are going to be covering one of my personal favorite installments of the series, X-Men Apocalypse. But before we get into all the fun tonight, make sure you smash that like button, be excellent, and share this out with all of your friends out there who are fans of the MCU, fans of Marvel, fans of the X-Men, and tell them that get on over to the Ambassadorial Wing because this is where the discussion, this is where the party is going to be tonight. And if you have not subscribed to the Ambassador Wing, we are closing in on that big 500 subscribers. So make sure if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell that goes ding, hit all notifications so you know when I upload, you know when I go live, and join the party, join the community, and let's have some fun tonight. And as always, I have with me my good friend. You know him. You love him. Well, he's an acquired taste, but I say that nicely. Mr. Zach Leary, a.k.a. the clown prince of crime, Zach Napier.
It's good to be back.
Zach.
Yeah, I don't care. It's good to be back. Thank you.
You're welcome, bud. Good to see you. So, all right, there we go. Why am I froze? Why is the thing being stupid? Okay. All right, there we go. Now we're running. So, as I mentioned before in the intro, we are covering this evening X-Men Apocalypse. And this has been a long time in the coming. Ever since I started this series back last year, it has been literally last year since I started the X-Men reviews. It's been a good time, been a good series of streams, and tonight will be no different. So, that all being said, Zach, my good friend, let's jump in. X-Men Apocalypse. Your opening thoughts.
Well, so I had not seen the film until yesterday night, last night. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was pretty good. I've got a couple of issues with mainly the opening section of the film, but aside from that, I think you've got a pretty solid film here. What I like about the X-Men movies in general is they have kind of a high budget B movie feel to them. So it's like I don't know, it's a fun time, just about always, excluding maybe Dark Phoenix.
And Last Stand.
Yeah. Last Stand, I can jive with, but I don't know. I always have a good time watching these movies, and yeah, it was good.
This was the one villain that I had always hoped that they would do a movie on. I mean, we had Magneto for the first couple. We had William Stryker. We had Magneto again in X-Men The Last Stand. And then, of course, they did the big reboot back in 2011 with X-Men First Class, where we had Sebastian Shaw and the Hellfire Club. And then, of course, Days of Future Past. You had the Sentinels. You had Boulevard Trask. But this, you talk X-Men, what's the top, who's in the top 10 or the top 5 of all the villains of the X-Men? Of course, it is Insabanur Apocalypse. And he who cannot die. And when they announced this, they announced Bryan Singer was coming back to do this film. I was like, oh, good. Oh, thank you. Thank you. But then, of course, there was some controversy when this movie was in development because there were some stills that were released of Apocalypse's design. And I was one of those people who was like, what did you do? What did you do to Apocalypse? People were comparing him to Ivan Ooze from the Power Rangers, and I'm like, yeah. And thank heavens they listened. Thank heavens they listened, and they did some redesign. They did a recoloring, and there was much rejoicing. Yay!
Can we see the original design? I've never seen that.
Yeah, give me a minute. Talk amongst yourselves. Let's see. Uh,
Yeah, I thought he looked good for the most part. The problem is, I don't know. They could have maybe framed him slightly better at certain times. I mean, I don't know. For the most part, he looked okay to me.
well, if you look at Apocalypse from the comic books and even from the animated series, how he looks in the movie is very much in keeping with how he was designed originally. Um, Xmen design. All right. Okay, yeah. Here. Let me give me just a minute. I gotta pull it up. Hang on. I think I found a better one. Yeah, here we go. Here's a good image, so to speak. All right, let me bring this up here. Share screen, Chrome. Yeah, that was the original color design for Apocalypse, and yeah, as everybody was saying, he looked like Ivan Ooze from the Power Rangers, and we're like, no. But then they got wise and they did a recolor and they did a
Oh
redesign,
my
and
god,
yeah,
that is
that was
fucking
the
horrendous.
original. Yeah, yeah. People were not happy. People were really, really not happy. I mean, I can understand them. This movie takes place in the 1980s and it's a more vibrant color palette for that decade. A lot more neon, a lot more bright, vibrant color. But put that with the other characters. Put that with like Jubilee. Put that with like Cyclops or Storm or whoever. Don't do that to Apocalypse. This is a guy who's been around since the beginning of the world, essentially. He's not purple. But yeah,
Well,
the other
I would
as
have
you
done prob probably more just on the one we have in the film. I don't know about showing him in broad daylight. You know, do you know what I mean? It's like you show him in these white hallways of the X-Men. It's like, it's got the uncanny valley syndrome, I think, a little bit.
that never bothered me. Now, this image here that you're looking at, this is more accurate to the his comic book appearance, and then of course Oscar Isaac in the costume and makeup. And I have to say, Oscar Isaac did a darn good job in this movie. I mean, compared to some other movies that will remain nameless here, sequel trilogy. Excuse me. His performance here, okay, I'll say it. He was good as Poe Dameron, and he was good as Apocalypse there. But
Yeah,
you
he
know,
was good
a
as
lot
uh, Atreides. He's a good actor. You got to just give him a good
he
script.
is. Yeah, and the funny thing is, as I was watching the credits last night, and the name Simon Kinberg popped up as one of the writers for this, along with Brian Singer and a few other people. I'm like, okay, Simon Kinberg is a decent writer when he's working with others, but he is an absolutely horrendous director, as evidenced by the two films that he directed in the X-Men franchise that both pretty much scuttled the franchise. Uh, Anything up until Disney bought 20th Century Fox, and now we're going to be getting X-Men in the MCU. And well, as most everybody knows, I am a fan, so yes, I am happy that we're finally going to be getting the X-Men in the MCU. So let me pull this. There we go. But in terms of the movie itself, it's a fairly straightforward concept. It's the bad guy trying to take over the world. And what was a big trope of the 1980s? The bad guy trying to take over or destroy the world. And Bryan Singer very much brought that particular trope to the forefront in this movie. I mean, it is a common theme within a lot of superhero movies, within a lot of comic book movies, and particularly in the X-Men films. What's the bad guy trying to do? Take over the world.
Yeah, well,
But
they did it in an interesting way. I felt because Apocalypse was motivated partially by disgust. Like he was disgusted with the modern world and what he saw and just the way that we were living. He was like, "Oh, there's that awesome scene where he kind of patches into I think the internet or something, and he's looking at all the different major events and all this stuff. He's like, "What have you done?"
yeah, well, it's not so much the internet. He because the internet this takes place in 1983, so the internet isn't quite there yet. But if you look
But
at
what was he
he's
doing?
linking in he was linking in through satellite dishes because if you look at the roofs of all those buildings in Cairo, they all had satellite dishes, and he was used essentially just he was tapping into the satellite network, worldwide global satellite network, and downloading everything. Um, have you ever seen Fifth Element, Zach?
Gotcha. Yeah. Hmm.
Kind of like what Lilu did and everything. Learning all of our history, just typing in words and learning about human culture, human civilization, and everything that we've done over the entire spans of our existence. And yeah, it's the one thing about like the one element about Apocalypse that they kept that I really appreciated for this film is that he is very driven. He's driven by survival of the fittest. Only the strong will survive. That very Darwin-esque mindset, even though it wasn't even Darwin didn't even exist yet. But you have to realize Apocalypse comes from a different mentality. He quite literally comes from a different age of the world, where only the strongest lived, the weak died, and he sees the decadence of the world around him. He sees how much humanity has just raised up what he calls these false gods and these false idols, and that is the weak that are running the world rather than it being the strong running the world. And that has always been his raison d'etre of his character throughout his entire existence within the X-Men franchise, both in comic books and the animated series, and now in cinema. And I love how this is something new that they incorporated into his character because before he had access to all these powers and abilities, his main power and ability was the ability to control the molecular structure of the world around him, and of course his immortality. Now they depicted his immortality a little bit differently, but it's still in keeping with what the comics portrayed, that he could transfer his essence or his consciousness from body to body as the body would decay and it could no longer maintain his power, because as he evolved or changed bodies, he would often pick a mutant body or a mutant to transfer his old self or his consciousness from body to body, and he would borrow those, or he would retain those powers throughout those different transfers, kind of like in the same instance of what Rogue does with her ability.
Yeah. Well, it reminded me of Palpatine. We'll go with the Dark Empire, and rather than the sequels.
Yeah. Well, and but in this instance, it wasn't so much a cloned body; it was a host that was willing to be
Yeah, but
co-opted or taken over.
that yeah,
Go
that
ahead, Zach.
superpower though, essence transfer was I think introduced to me with Dark Empire. So there you go.
It probably was. Well, it's something like I said that did exist in the X-Men comics. It might be a trope and everything where you have um characters that just they hop from body to body to body. But moving on from Apocalypse, of course, we get introduced to the new team, the new group of students. You got Cyclops, obviously Scott Summers. You've got Angel, which unfortunately Angel gets killed in this film and everything. And I think honestly that if I had any nitpick or any criticism, Angel gets killed in this movie, and I think Angel was kind of wasted because Warren Worthington is a really complex character within the X-Men universe, and for him to just get a one-off and then get killed was a little disappointed, but at the same time I get it. You could, of course, get introduced to Aurora Monroe, aka Storm. You get introduced to Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler. And I will say, in terms of Nightcrawler's design, I'm glad they kept the angelic tattoos on his face and hands and so on. And I think in keeping with his appearance in X2, X-Men United, when he was portrayed by Alan Cumming. So, but I will say Nightcrawler is a bit of the comedic relief, but at the same time, he is a fish out of water. He is from East Germany, and him being brought over to America, it's a very jarring experience for him. And of course, we get also introduced to Jean Grey, who's played by Sophia Turner. And this was early on in her, I think, as she was doing Game of Thrones as well. And to see her portrayal in this movie and to see how much she was wasted in Dark Phoenix, Sophia Turner had a lot of potential as the character of Jean Grey in this movie. I think she was just as good. Granted, this is a younger Jean Grey. This is Jean Grey in her, I'd say, her late teens, her early 20s, give or take. And she very much had a lot of that same. She carried herself in much a similar manner as Famke Jensen did as an older Jean Grey that we saw in the early 2000 films with X2 or X-Men X2 and X-Men Last Stand. Although we don't count X-Men Last Stand, it's not canon. But I digress.
You've got let me throw this out there in defense of Last Stand. That scene where Magneto flips the truck is fucking awesome.
It is. There are nuggets of coolness in X-Men Last Stand, but the sum of the sum of its parts are just it makes your head hurt, especially when you are a hardcore X-Men fan like I am. X-Men Last Stand just it breaks so many of the rules, and it does it in such a way that's so disrespectful to all the characters. I mean, they kill off Scott, they kill off the professor, and then they bring him back miraculously. Now, again, I digress. They did leave an in. They did leave a loophole for Xavier to come back and everything because you have that post-credit scene with him and Moira McTaggart. Not the same Moira McTaggart that we meet here, but that we met in the reboot, but a different Moira McTaggart that we met in X-Men Last Stand. But I will say the rest of the cast in X-Men Apocalypse. I mean, you got Jennifer Lawrence back as Mystique. You've got James McAvoy back as Xavier. You've got Michael Fassbender back as Magneto, and they all do their jobs. They portray the characters very well. This is obviously a progression or evolution of the characters. I will say I did like the idea of Magneto having a family. But I also will say it breaks your heart to see what happens to his family. And particularly the fact that his daughter herself is also a mutant. And that scene for me was a real gut punch because it seems like he's living a good life. Granted, yeah, he's in communist Poland, I believe. But he seems happy. And then Apocalypse does his thing, sends the shake heard around the world when he gets woken up. And I will say this, and I say this jovially. If Moira McTaggart had never gone down into that cave, Apocalypse would have never been woken up. Think about that. Really think about that.
Yeah.
If Moira had never,
so I'll say this jovially is if I had sold out fucking Magneto to the cops, I would have called out sick the next day. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I would not have been there.
No, I wouldn't. I would not have been within 10 miles of that factory because if that community is as small as it appears, then word's going to spread quickly of what happened. And you feel bad. I mean, you legitimately feel bad for Magneto because he's just trying to live his life. He has a wife, he has a child, and he's just trying to get by. He's not trying to cause any trouble. He's kind of given up on his war against humanity, and he's just trying to exist. And he just people cannot leave him be. And yeah, he did that. He did do a horrible, horrendous thing in Days of Future Past, obviously, but he seems aware of his ways, and he's not trying to cause trouble. And then Apocalypse is like, oh, it's time for me to wake up now because Moira McTaggart went down to the cave and caused that device to activate. Thanks a lot, Moira. But anyway, Zach, your any other notes that you have in terms of Apocalypse or anything that you want to bring up?
Yeah, well, we could go into the opening part.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we have a fractured opening sequence. I think the sequencing was a little bit off because you're jolted around to like 8 different primary characters in 20 minutes, which is kind of a no-no. I would prefer that we stick with Scott for the first 15 minutes and then use certain plot devices to go, because so Professor X even learns about the earthquake later on. So you could flash back then and tie everything together in, I think, a more neat way than what we had. That's the main problem I had, was how just the opening 25 minutes, half an hour just jolts you around.
Mm-hmm. I can understand that critique because for somebody, and you brought this up before we went live, for somebody that's kind of new to the X-Men universe, this style or the structure of how these films have been edited together could be considered very jarring. For someone who's more acclimated to how these films have been edited together, this is a common theme within the X-Men films. You introduce the main conflict or the main antagonist, then you bring in the heroes and so on, and then you just kind of push they push the story forward. So I do understand what you're saying. I'm not gonna say that's out of bounds for you to make that critique. It could have been maybe pieced together a little bit differently. But as far as my viewing experience and everything, I've only watched this movie like 2 or 3 times. It's not that I dislike the movie. It's one of those that if I'm going to sit down and watch, I want to give it my full attention. So, I mean, you go from seeing Apocalypse in the far distant past in ancient Egypt, and you see the
Yep,
rebellion
yep.
against him, and you see the destruction of his pyramid, and then you jump forward to 1983 with Scott and his powers emerging, and then him going to the university, to Xavier's school, and you have the reintroduction of his
Yeah,
brother
well,
Havoc.
but
Go ahead.
before that, before we see him go to the school, they even cut that part in half. So you see him in 83, then you go to Mystique in Berlin and Angel, you've got the fight. Then you go to Magneto, and then you go to the mansion with Scott. So it's like, what? Why are we jumping around like this? You know?
Now you bring that up, and yeah, it would have made more sense just to keep it as a cohesive whole. Have it just be Scott being going from the high school going to Xavier's school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see where I could see where that could be a bit jarring. I mean, for me,
We'll see
it
it
doesn't
better.
bother my. It probably
Keep
would
it all,
have.
but sequence it better. Yeah, sequence it better. It's like I was
Yeah.
saying. You could have a picture of Professor X with Eric. You could have Scott talking with X in his office, and he says, "Oh, who's this guy?" Well, first you could say, "I didn't know you could walk." He's like, "Yeah, I wasn't always in this chair."
In a wheelchair.
And he
Yeah.
says, "Well, who's this guy?" He's like, "It's an old friend." Then you go over to Eric's little storyline, so you could tie it all in a little bit better in that opening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think honestly that could have worked better, and but in terms of, how it progresses the story, I think that might have actually progressed the story a little bit smoother because you are jumping around quite a bit and everything, but for me, I'm accustomed to that style of editing. I'm accustomed to that style of storytelling. So it's not a big. It doesn't pull me out of the movie by any stretch, but it's just I can see where that could have been cleaned up a lot better. And in terms of the different plot lines and them all coalescing together, you of course have the reintroduction of, well, now Colonel Stryker after Apocalypse and the rest of the Horsemen come in to the into the school, and they capture Xavier, and then you have Havoc, or not Havoc, yeah, Havoc, um, shooting his beam and everything, and inadvertently destroying the school. And then of course you have another I think iconic sequence with Quicksilver, and you have it set to "Sweet Dreams" by the Eurythmics, another big band from the 1980s. And
Yes, yes.
I I will say this: Evan Peters as Quicksilver, he's always done a great job. Again, he was completely and utterly wasted in Dark Phoenix. I felt I said this in the video I did back last year when I did my comparison, when I did my editorial on how you don't do the Dark Phoenix saga. Quicksilver in Dark Phoenix was utterly wasted, and I will say this too. I wish he would have just come out and said to Magneto, "Hey, I am your son." I really wish they would have. I really wish he had just come out and told him that, "Hey, I'm your son," in this movie. That's one thing that bothered me. I'm like, you're right there. He's right there. Just either tell him then, or tell him after the fight's over. Have a scene, have a deleted scene or something where they're at the school, and he finally comes. He goes to Eric and says, "Hey, do you remember X? Do you remember this woman? You remember being with her, you having a
Yeah,
relationship with her, having a kid?" And he's like, "Guess what? I'm your son." And I think that would have been, because he lost a family, and now he's gained at least part of his family, at least part of a family back. And that's the one thing about this film that kind of bothered me, is they never tied that particular plot point together.
yeah, you got a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And there's many ways you could have done that scene. You could have done it right there in Egypt, or you could have done it at the very end. You could even just stick with him walking away from Professor X at the end, and have Evan Peters come out a door in the hall and run after him. Hey, wait, shoot them with a wide shot at the end of the hall from 20 feet away. When I was talking about my family, I was talking about you, and do that. Many ways you could do that. Great opportunity. If you and I were just to sit down and say, how would you do that? There's so many great ways that you could do that scene.
Well, and even as you mentioned, do it as a wide shot, and not even have the dialogue audible, but just have the two of them standing, talking to one another, and then you see Magneto brace himself like against a wall or a door or something when he cut when Quicksilver tells him. And that, I think, honestly would be more just as powerful, if not more so, than actually hearing Quicksilver say it to him.
Okay, I like where you're going. I like that. And then you could have him come over and just hesitate and just stare at him for a minute like he's about him, and he fucking hugs him.
Yeah. And then you could even and then transfer to or transition to the scene where the team is in the danger room with Mystique, and she makes her speech, and then have it end right there. And you could even still have, and you could even still have Magneto leave, but you leave that door open for where there is communication between him and Peter. It's never necessarily stated, but there's the understanding that they will keep in contact with one another.
Well, you could even play it in a way where Magneto is not ready for that kind of burden due to his fear of
Yeah.
loss. He's got
Yeah.
that fear of loss in him, which is why he's such a distant guy.
Hmm.
After that, and even to begin with, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's gone through so much mental turmoil and loss.
Hmm.
I think it fits right in where he would not be. He's happy to hear that, but
Hmm.
is he going to be Mr. Dad? No, no.
No, he isn't. But here's the thing, too. This is a nearly grown man. Peter Quicksilver. He's an adult at this point, and they could develop as a relationship of some sort. It doesn't necessarily have to be father and son, although it could go that way. And that would have been, I think, a great way to potentially ramp up the series because this this for me, this is where the series, well, this is where the X-Men films in terms of the team films ends. Now, tomorrow we're going to be discussing Logan, obviously, but in terms of how where the team movies wrap up, Apocalypse is it.
Yeah, well,
And
yeah. Go ahead.
because,
Sorry.
well, just one thing I'll say real quick. I do not count Dark Phoenix. I do not count Dark Phoenix as canon. I do not count Dark Phoenix as canon. And real quick before you give your next point, Zach, I want to say hello to the chat, Ferris of Ferris Geeks World. Good to see you, buddy. Appreciate you stopping in this evening, and hope you're having a good week. So, all right, Zach,
Yeah, it
carry
did
on.
feel like it felt like a team movie, and when you see them defeat Apocalypse at the end, you had multiple members really going all out to pull that
Mhm.
off. And it felt, and this would sound like a criticism or like a jab at the film. It's not, but
Mhm.
it for whatever reason it reminded me of the Fantastic Four defeating Doctor Doom in that first movie.
I was kind of the first time I watched this, I was like, this seems somewhat familiar. Then, yeah, I can actually see where you're coming from. Well, and here's the thing too. In all the other battles with Apocalypse, it always takes the entire team just to push him back because his powers are so far advanced beyond what a normal regular mutant, if you could categorize as such, would be capable of doing on their own. I mean, even Magneto, as powerful as Magneto is, even he has a hard time slowing Apocalypse down. And then you got Magneto and Scott, and even Scott has to take a break because he's just not to that point yet where he has that much control of his powers. And then, of course, you have Jean Grey come in and she releases her full potential as not as the Phoenix, but she doesn't hold back with her abilities, her telekinetic and her telepathic abilities. And she's the one that tips the balance in their favor, and
Yeah,
they're able to
with
just to
with him fighting X in his mind at the same time.
yeah. Yeah, and I will say this, I love that particular sequence because there are in the comics and the cartoon in particular, the 90s cartoon, one of Apocalypse's abilities is he can increase his size or his mass where he does overshadow everyone. And I did like the fact that you don't see it in the when he's out in the real world, but in that particular sequence with the battle between him and Xavier, you do get to see that homage to that particular aspect of his abilities. I was like, okay, you're not doing it out here in the real world. You're not seeing him balloon up big and everything and tall and massive to where he's like you have Apocalypse Kaiju, but you've got it there in the what they call the astral plane of their two minds.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a strong sequence. I was thinking
Mhm.
at one point like, oh God, are we not going to have a final fight? We did, and I thought it worked pretty well. And I'm not sure what made me think that. It could have been I don't know, the fact that he was going back to be sedated. I'm like, oh, they're going to get him when he's on the table, which would have been underwhelming, you know.
Yeah, them, and I will say this: I did like how they structured the introduction of the Horsemen because and I did like who they did pick for for his horseman. Now they did break a little bit with canon, in terms of the four horsemen. Um, they have the monikers of, well, the biblical characters: war, pestilence, famine, and death. In this particular version, you don't have that, and but honestly, that never bothered me. You had him enhance and amplify the abilities of Angel, repair his wings because unfortunately one of his wings got damaged in that last fight between him and Nightcrawler, and then you've got Psylocke. And I will say this: Olivia Munn as Psylocke, her performance and her appearance was in perfect keeping with how she appeared in the comics. And yes, I will say this: was her costume a bit skimpy? Yes, but it was skimpy in the comic books too.
Well, here's
So.
the thing: is we saw this is interesting too. Is we saw his
Mhm.
horseman betray or save his ass at the beginning.
Mhm.
So if he had had acolytes who were that loyal later on at the end of the film, I mean, we might be have a different situation. So you had, I think, three of them turned on him.
Only two of them turned on him because the Psylocke and Angel stayed um stayed on his side. It was Magneto and Storm who turned on him, but Storm didn't turn on him until the very end because she realized who Apocalypse was attacking, and that was, of course, Mystique. Because in this movie, Mystique has become kind of like this icon within the community, considering what happened back in 1973 in Days of Future Past, and the fact that she helped save the president. And it's it's very I think it's a great evolution for Mystique's character. I think honestly, this would have been the proper point for her story to end, for her story arc come to come full circle, where she comes back to the school and she becomes an instructor, and she's teaching the students how to use their abilities in an offensive manner. So,
Which
and
to
I do
me
want
was a little
to.
bit bizarre, to be honest, seeing her as a teacher.
Well, she's not going to be one of the teachers that's teaching like philosophy or literature or science or math or whatever the case. She's going to be the teacher that teaches the students how to use their abilities to protect themselves. And that,
She
I think,
yeah, she reminds me of Professor Snape.
yes, she's a hard ass, but she's the reason she's a hard ass is because she wants the students to live. She wants them to survive. And I do want to bring up Ferris's comment here real quick and everything before we carry on, because this does touch upon something we already had discussed. I'm really disappointed that Quicksilver and Magneto never reunited, and know the fact that they are father and son, and we didn't even get a mention of the Scarlet Witch in that universe. Yeah, but at that point, Ferris, they weren't going to be able to introduce the Scarlet Witch because, well, the Scarlet Witch was already the MCU proper at this point because Elizabeth Olsen had already been introduced as the Scarlet Witch in Age of Ultron. But
What a fucking great actress she is, by the way.
Elizabeth Olsen, oh yeah,
Oh my god.
well, it's her pedigree. I mean, her two older sisters, Mary Kate and Ashley. I mean, they've had some rocky years, yeah, but they, as young child actresses, they had a they had a really big thriving career. So, but yeah, she's. I mean, I will say this: of all the actresses in the MCU, or all the actors and actresses in the MCU, I think Elizabeth Olsen has had a great run. And, from her introduction in Age of Ultron to her latest appearance in Multiverse of Madness, Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, her whole story arc has been I think, honestly, one of the very best in the MCU. But we're not talking MCU per se tonight. Obviously, we're talking about X-Men Apocalypse. Um, Let me ask you, Zach, of the actors and slash actresses that portrayed Apocalypse's Horseman, who was the strongest? Who gave the strongest performance in your opinion? And then there was silence. Zach, you there? Are we still going? I think we are. Okay, well, while Zach's doing whatever he's doing, I'll give y'all my opinion. I have to say
Okay,
that
am I back?
my
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Did you did
So
you?
I heard you said who's the. I cut out for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard the last thing I heard you say is who was the strongest horseman?
Who was your favorite performance of the Horseman?
Well, Magneto counts, so I would go with
Okay.
him.
Okay.
You've got the Angel character. The introduction to him joining the team was pretty good, where you see him kind of like angry and he's drinking whiskey out of the bottle and stuff. But I don't know. Like you said, he was kind of an undercooked part of the movie, but there was potential there for him. But you can't really top Magneto.
I I I would have to say of the four, I think Storm's arc or her performance was actually pretty good too because there's a lot of complexity there as well. Because she she holds Mystique up as this role model for someone who fights for mutant rights. And when you see her realization that it's Mystique that's trying to save everybody and she's working with this tyrant, this megalomaniac who's trying to destroy the world essentially, and she realizes, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong side here. I thought her performance, particularly in that particular sequence, was actually really on point. But I'm not
Well,
saying. Go ahead.
she here's the bottom line with me is
Mm-hmm.
we've got a fucking problem when it comes to anybody who was backing somebody like Apocalypse. So I would have put Storm in prison or done something to her, kill her. So I mean, it's like she's supporting this. I mean, come on, she's supporting the most. Like, I mean, come on. She's like, yeah, I'm good with this. It's like, no, that does not fly with with me. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do understand that, but I think the fact that she does see the error of her ways and she realizes, yeah, I'm on the wrong team here, and that she does come in, she comes in the pinch and helps him bring him down. And the thing you have to remember too is he essentially co-ops them. He, in essence, brainwashes all of them except for really Magneto, because Magneto is in a place where he is already very angry. He's very resentful. He's very bitter. And Apocalypse just really kind of amplifies that and feeds
Yeah.
those negative emotions.
Well, he tries
So
to use his past against him too. Takes him back to
yeah,
his childhood internment camp
mhm,
and the whole thing.
yeah, take them to Auschwitz. Yeah, and you have that whole sequence where he finally snaps out of it and he's like, "Yeah, I'm this is not the side I want to be on. I don't want the world to be completely destroyed and remade by this megalomaniac." I will say though, the design for the costumes for the horsemen, I really appreciate because there are elements of how they originally appeared in the comic books, and but were adapted. I mean, in particular with Magneto and Storm. As I mentioned, Olivia Munn as Psylocke. Psylocke was always very her costuming in the comic books was always very seductive, and she was well. Let's just say she was portrayed very voluptuously in the comic books as well, and they didn't over sexualize her in the movie, but there was still the hint of that original design for Psylocke in the movie. And I like the fact that they tried to pay homage to all the characters' designs, but they didn't go overboard on it. kind of to quote the original movie, would you expect us to go out in yellow spandex? I still love that line from that first X-Men movie.
Yeah, well, so going back in terms of nostalgia, okay, so we've got Stryker. This is one of this. I had this on my notes. I had to ask you,
Yeah.
who is your favorite actor to play Stryker? Because I am in a firm camp. I've got my guy. You've got Brian Cox in X2.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Danny Houston that took on the younger part. We've got this guy, and I think we've got a few different other ones as well.
Well, we have Brian Cox next to, and then um we have Stryker's appearance in X-Men Origins Wolverine. I thought that performance was actually pretty good, but and that's about the strong. That's one of the few the good points of that movie.
That was a good. Well,
But
that guy is a savage. That guy,
mhm,
Danny Houston, is the son
yeah,
of fucking legend John Houston.
huh? I did not know that. I really didn't. So, well,
That
that
guy's
makes
a
sense.
fucking bad motherfucker. Danny Houston's been doing great past few years. He shows up in everything. This guy.
Yeah, yeah, and he's a really solid actor. The first movie I ever saw him in was actually 30 Days a Night. Was actually an adaptation
Oh yeah,
of a
yeah.
comic and
I
everything,
remember
and
that.
great job in that movie. So, and I'll bring up Ferris's comment here real quick. Give me a second. The thing that bothered me about the Horsemen is they're not as strong as they are in the comics. My adaptation of the Horsemen that I like the most is the one in X-Men Evolution. Yeah, Ferris, I have to agree with that. I think the only other one that was a little bit better was the Horsemen in the 97 series. Fictional MCU canon of yes, President Larry, the Pentagon has
You
hired
don't have to read
dead.
that. Don't read that out
We're,
loud.
we've arrested all Apocalypse co-conspirators, and some we have some nukes that they didn't know about. We're now in charge. We've already captured Gorbachev. Okay. But this particular iteration of the Horseman wasn't bad. I mean, it was very multi-layered, and I think they didn't get as much screen time as they necessarily could have been given. But at the same time, you've got so many other characters that you've got to give screen time to and get their stories put through the movie that you have to sacrifice somewhere. So sacrificing screen time for the Horseman, I can forgive, honestly. Um,
Well, you saw they were devoted to him. I mean, they did everything
yes.
possible up until their death,
Hmm.
just to protect him. Like they were
Yeah.
willing to sacrifice for him.
Yeah. And that's well, that was their main purpose, honestly. Now there is a little segment, and you brought up Striker.
Well,
I
wait, you
don't.
didn't answer my question though.
Yes, I did. I said Brian Cox.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Brian Cox is the best striker. Honestly, this version of Striker, a younger Striker, and the actor who plays him. When I see this actor, I think of the douchebag from the first Jack Reacher movie who gets his ass whipped, and that's all I see. That's
Yeah,
all I see. I mean,
he,
I'm sure he's a good actor, but all I see is, oh yeah, it's that smug asshole from the first Jack Reacher movie.
he's a little milk toast in this for sure. I like them both. Brian Cox is really hard to beat. That's my guy too.
Yeah,
But Danny Houston is a savage though. He had a creepy vibe to him in that
he
movie for
did.
sure.
He really did.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
Brian Cox though is like that guy presents like a taskmaster persona.
perfect.
Yeah, really
He was
good.
perfect. He was perfect as Striker. And then, of course, we have a extended cameo by well, the main character of the next movie, of course, Hugh Jackman back as the Wolverine. But Wolverine, like we've never really seen him before, and it was cool to see Wolverine at this particular point in his history, just as the pure savage, as the weapon, just the pure killing machine. And honestly, that whole section, I was just like, popcorn. Grant, that's what I was watching when we saw it. Me and Matt and Ambassador went and saw it originally in theaters. But rewatching it last night, I was like, I still love this scene. I still love this section where we're back at Alkali Lake, and so, and do want to say hello to chat, good friend of the channel, fellow ambassador, Mr. DJ Odyssey. Deej, it's good to see you, pal. William Stryker is like Elvis's manager. His whole career is taking advantage of Wolverine. Zach,
Yeah.
you can't put these in the comments or the chat.
Well, it's like, I mean, how long has this guy been doing this? You know, it's like, come on, dude.
So, well, and the fact that there's that very brief interaction. Oh, Ferris, I didn't know that. Or, Geej, I'm sorry. Wow, that stinks. What a shame. Lisa Marie Presley's died. Well,
wow.
golly.
Wow. Yeah. Damn. So I made an Elvis reference just 25 seconds ago.
Yeah. Wow.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That stinks. So, and hey, we have another guest. Give a warm welcome, everybody, to a regular here on the A Wing, the Ambassador Wing, Ferris of Ferris Geeks World. Ferris, good evening.
Hey, what's up, Ambassador? What's up, Zach? How you guys doing?
Oh.
Doing okay, bud. You know what we're talking about. So.
Yeah, when it comes to X-Men Apocalypse, I was so excited that they're, making this movie. Like when I heard about the announcement, like I was, like when I heard about this coming up, like, I wonder if they're gonna use if they're really gonna use the cast from the First Class, or they're gonna use the cast from the original trilogy. Because I always thought that the idea of an X-Men Apocalypse movie with the original cast would be rad, because the image of the image of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine fighting Apocalypse would have been dope. Because I would imagine like that would have been a really much epic movie. But then when I found out like it's gonna be the same cast from First Class, I thought, okay, that'll be fine, because if they're gonna be adapting, like, let's say the X Factor comic where we got the OG X-Men, the OG 5, that would have been cool. But I'm glad that we got like a young Cyclops, a young Jean Grey, a young Storm. But it's kind of, and we got Angel again, and we still got Nicholas Hoult as Hank McCoy Beast. And and the movie, for the plot of the movie, I thought it was just okay. But it's just that there are plenty of factors that I'm really getting bothered with, like in the characters and their roles. And I thought like the fact, like when you mentioned about the Horseman, like I freaking love Magneto when they picked him as a Horseman. And I thought like the way that they bring him, when Apocalypse like bring him into the Horseman was like a really good scene. Because Magneto, like when I picture the Horseman, I always imagine like it's either between the 90s series or the Evolution series, because I grew up with both series back then. When they pick Magneto, that was cool, and when they pick Storm, that was even that was even cool too. And the fact that a younger Storm becomes a Horseman, that sounds awesome. But again, I'm really bothered by the fact that they're not really a strong Horseman like they're in the comics or in the adaptation of the 90s animated series or the Evolution series.
Well, Storm.
Yeah, none of that was there though. You were saying?
Yeah, well, doesn't it, Ferris? Does it not like make you like question her later on? It's like, bitch, you were a Horseman. It's like, why should I take anything you have to say seriously?
Yes, I get. I got bothered by that fact. Like, dude, you just joined the Horseman, and then somehow when you saw Mystique, like, you just turn yourself around, like, all of a sudden, and all that, you just got snapped out of it. Like when I found out about that, it's like, this is a really weak this is a really sudden transition. Like if they were in a mind control, like the way they are in X-Men Evolution, because all the four horsemen in that series adaptation, they were all under the mind control of Apocalypse. Yeah, we saw, like in that series, like they all got their some kind of wires on their head, or whatever the case. So we can understand that they were under a mind control. And this one, they're just like joining a club, and then somehow like you
Yeah,
regret, and then somehow you
it's a good
turn
point.
around. Yeah, I got bothered by that fact. Like if they do like the evolution route, like you have to destroy Apocalypse and free the mutant that got free the mutant horseman that got mind control. That would have been a great one, because this one is just too sudden, I would say. I mean, the way they do it here is just too sudden, in my
Well,
opinion.
it creates like a creepy history with Storm and Magneto. It's like, hey, it's like, so we're talking about like the Hugh Jackman ones, right? Like one, X2, and Last Stand. It's like, why should I take Storm's anything she says seriously? It's like you joined up with the worst person ever, like 20 years ago.
Yeah,
Well, but
that
here's the
is
thing
true.
too. Well, here's the only thing
Go
though.
ahead.
At that point, Logan wasn't even a part of the team. He was, and the thing you have to realize too, in terms of timeline, this, okay, how it's supposed to flow, and this is how I understand it, is that the reboot movies feed into the original films, essentially, but there's a there's two movies that are dumped out of the timeline, and that's of course Dark Phoenix and Last Stand, and where the series really ends is with Logan.
Officially,
And
though,
that's at least my understanding of how the timeline works, because
okay.
the characters that when they rebooted, the understanding was these movies would go forward to the original two or three, whichever ones you regard as canon. And even Brian Singer said with the end of Days of Future Past, that was a bit of a reboot as well, because you see at the end that Jean is alive and everything, whereas she would have been theoretically dead by the point of the event stand. But with um, First Class, and then Days of Future Past, and then Apocalypse, I don't count Dark Phoenix, and then it goes into X-Men, and then X2, and then at the very end of the timeline is Logan, essentially, which we'll be covering tomorrow night. So, but I do understand what you're both saying in terms of how they kind of retcon Storm's backstory, because we never had any mention of any of these events. But then again, at the same time, they never expected to have to do a hard reboot on the whole series because of the underperformance and the very
Yeah.
negative reception of Last Stand.
Well, but
So
what she did is she was with the same party guilty of crimes against humanity. Right? It's like, is that
mhm.
really the kind of backstory
Yeah,
you want to give one of your hero characters? No, no, it's not. So I like what Ferris was saying. It have them mind controlled instead of being convinced to join.
yeah, and I agree with that as well. I mean, now the thing I do like, and it is in keeping with the comic books and how Apocalypse's powers are portrayed, he does have the ability to amplify a mutant's abilities. Well, in the comic books and the cartoons, he has technology that allows him to do this, but in the movie, anything we see him just simply do it because of his advanced abilities or anything as a mutant. So that particular aspect of his character and how he works doesn't necessarily bother me all that much.
Yeah, well, you could have him put up his hand, and you see the little eye flicker thing, and all of a sudden they're a little bit more accepting of his proposal.
That too. Yeah, I think if they had played on the whole idea of him really brainwashing them, it would have made especially Storm Magneto's turn back a lot more powerful if it's about at least Maria Rayhurd. It's all right, sweetie. So,
you guys remember? Do you guys remember like in the animated series when Angel becomes a horseman and he, like he
yes.
finally like learned his mistakes when like Rogue, like uses her powers to to touch Archangel and finally realize his mistakes, and he immediately goes his revenge against Apocalypse, because again, like the way that they adapt Angel in that series and they turn him into Archangel, that was a fascinating, that was like a fascinating how I would say it's a fascinating story to explore, like the way like he wanted a cure, but then he find out that it was just a trick by by Mystique and then by Apocalypse, and then and finally, like again, this guy, the guy is a billionaire. I mean, he's the son of a billionaire, and he's also a billionaire, and he's been obsessed of finding a cure. Yeah, but somehow, like he learned that there is no such thing as a mutant cure. But the thing is, he just turns into a slave, into a horseman. That kind of story, still like clicks with us like throughout the years. But then again, when it comes to adapting Angel, in the movies, this is a error I would like to point out, like when it comes to this franchise. Like we saw Angel in The Last Stand, and he was played by Ben Foster. I think he looks like really younger than yeah, I think he's a lot younger than the main X-Men, which is James Marsden, Hugh Jackman, Famke Johnson, and Halle Berry. I think he's probably like younger than Sean Ashmore, who played Iceman. But then somehow in the new timeline, he's an adult. He's an adult, and he's a cage fighter somehow. Like, okay, I mean, I thought like the
Yeah.
way that they introduced Angel, this is like really strong adaptation. But then like he just got he just got taken off by a freaking military jet, and crash landing, like then take him down like instantly, which is like, dude, this is like a horse, like you just got metal wings, and then you can like throw off like metal feathers out of you, and then somehow he just got taken out. Like, I mean, this is like I don't know why it's too disrespectful to his character, I would say.
That was one thing about the movie that did bother me. I mean, I've talked about the stuff that I liked. Archangel or Angel's portrayal in the movie, it didn't completely rip me out of the movie, but it's not really in keeping with his original backstory. He is the son of a billionaire, of an industrialist. He's almost like he's one of the richest characters in the entire Marvel universe, next to like Tony Stark or what have you, or even Professor Xavier himself. I mean, let's be honest here. Xavier ain't exactly a pauper by any stretch, but yeah, Angel's portrayal and his journey in the movie was very truncated, honestly, and I would have liked him fleshed out more. But again, this movie is 2.5 hours, and it moves along at a pretty decent pace and everything. It doesn't really lag anywhere. So where do you put his story in at? And honestly, there isn't a easy answer, because you've got so many other stories going on, and some that are a lot more integral to the main focus of the story itself. I mean, you get the horsemen introduced, and you get them converted, and then they kind of just get shuffled to the back or to the side for the rest of the other characters in the movie. So, but it's
I
a
do have a
juggling
question
act,
though.
because the only way. Sure, Ferris, go ahead.
Do you think like this movie should have been like two part, like the same way like Infinity War or an Endgame? Because originally like Infinity War was going to be like two part, but then somehow he just got into one part, and then we go immediately to Endgame. But I think Apocalypse is like a really big, a big story in the comics, and not to mention we have the
Mhm.
Age of Apocalypse run, which is like how many freaking issue at that time, and and then
A lot.
that's like an alter, yeah, a lot, which is, and which is an alternate timeline, by the way. I mean, I thought for
Mhm.
a movie about a movie about Apocalypse would have been great if it's like a two-part movie. Like we got his backstory, and then we got, and then sooner we got like the present day where we meet the X-Men again. We got the X Factor, and then we got, we go into battle by, by the end of the movie somehow like that. Do you think it should have been a two-part movie?
Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting
Ferris has got a good
because
point here.
I think
Ferris
so
has got a
too.
good point here.
Yeah, I think so too because you
Hmm.
could it would give you a better opportunity to introduce these different plot lines. Like instead of having Magneto's family as like a 5 minute situation, a 10-minute situation, you could have a half hour and show him being treated like shit by the other guys, show them being suspicious of him. You could have little news clippings of like this Magneto story. It's like, is this the guy? Oh my god, and have little scenes of the suspicion, show the cops, the whole thing, build out the family, focus more on Scott, focus more on Jeans, and give them their own little arcs. That's a good idea, man. Give them more time. You could add something probably a lot better.
Ferris, you may have just had a hit upon another another script.
It's a
Hmm.
good idea. Yeah, expand it. And it reminds me what you said of how they brought in Hawkeye at the end in Endgame and introduced that with him. You could have them introduce Magneto's storyline in part two and open the film with him. That way, you don't have him kind of as kind of a I don't know, a mismatched piece of the puzzle in the first section.
Yeah, and longer with two parts. I mean, you don't want to go more than two. Honestly, I think two parts would be more than enough because there's precedent for that. Love him or hate him, the Hunger Game films, particularly with the last part with let's see, Hunger Games and Catching
Catching
Fire and
Fire, Mockingjay. Yeah, yeah.
Mockingjay. Yeah,
I like
Mockingjay
him.
Part One and
I'll
Two.
tell you why. Just real quick. I love
Mhm.
fucking Donald Sutherland playing an evil, creepy, fucking dictator.
Let-
Yeah,
I
he
don't
creeps the
just.
hell out of me too.
I know.
What do you, Zach? Let me ask you. Just brief segue. What do you feel about the prequel that they're doing that involves Snow?
It's a fucking cool idea. I've heard a little bit about it. They did a book,
M-
and
Man Ambassador has the book. I got it for her back. I think it was last year, and or maybe it was the year before, and everything. And she said it was actually pretty good. They're actually adapting it into a movie. I think it's supposed to come out next year or so.
he's a creepy
Okay.
motherfucker. I like his character, man. Always have.
Yeah, but as I was saying, you've got Mockingjay Part One and Two, and then of course you've got Deathly Hallows Part One and Two from the Harry Potter series.
That's
Uh,
an
it's
example of breaking a movie in half done wrong. The Harry Potter one in specific. That one,
hmm,
part one, is the worst entry into Harry Potter, period. But number two
hmm,
is the greatest film in the entire franchise. So they didn't even need that shit. You've
okay,
got them out in the woods for two and a
okay,
half hours. What the fuck are we doing? So you can do it right or you can do it wrong. So two
fair
good
enough.
examples. Harry Potter, I would say, is the don't.
The the weaker of the two. Yeah, I can understand that, but at the same time, I did enjoy Deathly Hallows Part One, and for one particular reason. Well, there's a couple of particular reasons, but my favorite is, of course, the animated segment about the Deathly Hallows themselves. I love that section of the movie, um, telling
Yeah,
about the
me
three
too.
brothers,
Yeah, that's cool.
meeting death.
But it's like
Um,
a melodrama soap opera in the woods for 2.5 hours. It's like, get the fuck
it
out
kind
of
of
here.
it is a little bit, but at the same time, I didn't. I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I still did enjoy it because I grew up watching soap operas as a kid. I watched
Yeah,
Days of Our
gotcha.
Lives. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say it. I watched Days of Our Lives. I
Who
watched.
who
Well,
uh
actually, that
who
was the only
killed
one I really.
who who killed JR? Right?
Dallas. I never actually got to watch. Never got
Okay.
to watch that. So, but I do know. I do know the reference. And Ferris is going, "What the hell are these two guys talking about?
Fucking
What the hell is Dallas?"
couple of old men.
Well, well, I'm familiar with those shows. It's just that I'm not really like watching them. Like I'm kind of like, let's say, watching
No.
Fresh Prince of Bel Air or Friends. I watch them
Yeah.
both because those other two shows, like you guys mentioned, and
Hmm.
not so much.
Oh, I'm not a
But
fan, Ferris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an Office guy, dude. That's my soap opera, The Office,
You gotta love Jim.
okay.
You gotta
or
love
Parks and
Jim.
Rec. Parks and Rec, another good one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I enjoy
Jim
Parks and Rec.
Offerman is my. I'm just gonna say this. Sorry, Fez. I want to cut you off, but I'll let you say your thing. Jim Offerman is my spirit animal. As Ron Swanson. Okay, Ferris, go ahead.
Nick Offerman.
Nick Offerman. Okay, sorry. Ferris, go ahead, bud.
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah, going back to it, like, I would have loved, like, if the movie, X-Men Apocalypse would have been two-part, because again, Apocalypse is a really big villain in in the X-Men universe, and they should have, like, explore more and more, to those kinds of story. And same thing with, Dark Phoenix before, because before Dark Phoenix, we have the Phoenix Saga, and we didn't even get that, and we only got like Dark Phoenix immediately. And Last Stand, Last Stand's adaptation of Dark Phoenix was just bad. Okay, it integrated with the Mutant Cure storyline. It doesn't fit well. That's the thing, though, because if you let's say, like, if you're adapting like two storylines from the comics, let's say Apocalypse and Days of Future Past, I think that would have been good. Like, you have Cable coming in, like, warning about Apocalypse, and like that would have been good. Like, when it comes to Last Stand, it was poorly executed. I would say, and going into this adaptation of Apocalypse, I think this should have been a two-part movie where we could at least get more backstory on Apocalypse. We know we just got a glimpse of that, like, in the beginning, and we
Well,
also got where the X-Men were at, like, even Magneto, and convincing them was just to, it was just, it was not like a really good way how to be a horseman. But again, I like what they did with X-Men Evolution, and but when it comes to this one, it was just too quick and too sudden, even by the end. And I think, like, I think, like, most Apocalypse episodes, like, in the animated series, are like two parts. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, they're two-part episode. And
Um,
yeah, if they do that in the animated series, why not do, like, why not make it a two-part in the movies?
I think
I'm kind
we,
of like,
yeah, I think we
so,
both
yeah, go
agree
ahead.
with you. The other thing is lay the groundwork for Apocalypse, is show little glimpses. What they did with Thanos was really something that I think worked really well, which was establishing this threat many movies prior to his arrival. So
mhm.
perhaps that would have been a good idea too, is show some hieroglyphs of him, have some little scene here and there about some ancient, the first mutant, and kind of build up that mythology about him before this film would be good too.
Yeah, because now I will say this to its credit, Days of Future Past did have the post-credit scene where we did see a very young Apocalypse constructing the ancient pyramids, but that's all we really got. I think what Singer and them were doing was trusting, and I don't think unduly so, on the fan base's knowledge of Apocalypse and having all that backstory already there, understanding the dynamic of the character and so on. So I'm not that that for me was not a big issue, but I think it would have made for a much richer story to maybe explore a bit more of Apocalypse's back history, but also having him co-opting or corrupting or manipulating the horsemen more and everything, really show him working on their anxieties and their fears, particularly with Storm and with Angel and with Psylocke and also with Magneto. And then, really fleshing out the relationship with a two-parter. You can really spend more time with the X-Men as well. You can really develop the relationships between the newer students coming in, and then the students that are already there, the teachers. And I will say this: Nick Holt as Hank McCoy, he is my second favorite Beast. I mean,
totally underused though. I mean, totally fucking underused in this. Am I wrong?
No, you're not. I mean, his presence in First Class and Days of Future Past, he really kicked butt in those two movies. This is the hierarchy of my beasts. It goes from the 90s animated series, and then Nick Holt, and then Kelsey Grammer. Anything. Kelsey Grammer. Yeah. Kelsey Grammer played Beast in Last Stand, and then he had that cameo at the end of
what?
Future Past.
How do I not remember this?
Well, he was under makeup. I think you probably didn't know about that.
Kelsey Grammer. That's hilarious. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing, and this is I'll try and keep this story short.
You're talking about the sitcom guy.
Yeah, Frasier, and also from Cheers.
That was him?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
That's awesome. I like Kelsey Grammer. That's crazy. Yes. I'm gonna have to let me look him up. We'll see if I recognize him.
Okay. Back when I was a kid, we went on. Me and my uncle, my late uncle, and my cousin. We all went on. We went on a road trip to Florida, and me and my uncle, being the comic book geeks that we were. Well, I mean, he used to draw. He used to draw comic panels freehand, and he was a really good artist. And we were talking about if they ever did the live action movies of these comic books, and who would we want as the different characters, who we'd want the characters to be played by. And we actually brought up Kelsey Grammer as Beast, because he's very intellectual. Now, granted, he can't do all the stunt work and the action work, but aside from that, he has that very cerebral, that very scholarly mentality. He has that. His voice even sounds in comparison to the voice actor who did the voice of Beast.
I didn't realize it was him for all these years. I didn't know it was him.
Yeah.
He's got a great presence to him in the old school movies.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he was one of the few good things about Last Stand. Was Kelsey Grammer as Beast?
Wasn't he in more than just that?
I totally agree.
Nope.
He only did that.
He had that, and then he had the cameo at the end where Logan comes back into the new timeline, and he's walking to Xavier's office, and you see him he's walking down a hallway, and he says, "Hey, good morning, Logan," and then he sees, and that's it, really. That's the only time you ever see Kelsey Grammer as Beast.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I thought.
So does that mean your uncle predicted predicted Kelsey Grammer? Does that mean your uncle predicted Kelsey Grammer is going to be Beast?
Him and me both. Me and him both. We kind of predicted him and who we'd want Professor Xavier to be played by, and that was, of course, Patrick Stewart. Because, well, he also has a very scholarly, very gentlemanly, and also mention he's also bald.
Well, I think when it comes to Patrick Stewart, I think when it comes to Patrick Stewart, I think he's already been like a fan favorite, cast. Like he's always been like the fan cast, like back then, like way before fan cast was a thing. For him to be like Xavier. I mean, it's pretty obvious that like the I don't know how many famous bold people are there in Hollywood, but I think like when it comes to Patrick Stewart, that's like the most instant easy choice to to pick as the actor to portray Xavier. That's the thing. I do want to bring this up though.
Oh,
Did any of you guys like back then ever like read a Wizard magazine before? Because those guys predicted Alan Cumming becoming Nightcrawler.
really?
Doesn't surprise me. Didn't surprise me. Yeah, I read Wizard religiously. It was like my geek Bible. I did. I read Wizard a lot and everything. I even every month I pick up my issue. So um I will say this.
This new guy wasn't bad as Nightcrawler, despite some of the comedic stuff. He wasn't. He didn't. I thought he was okay, man.
Honestly, as I mentioned early on before Ferris got in here, the fact that he has lived behind the Iron Curtain, he's lived in communist Germany all of his life, makes makes his reaction to everything a little more believable because all of it's going to be really foreign when he says, "What's a mall?" And Scott's like, "Oh, we gotta take you. It's a civic duty now. We have to take you to the mall." And I would have
Well,
loved to have seen that sequence. Now we
yeah,
do see a little bit of it.
the two-parter gives you that chance. Hey,
Well,
you
and
could
not
have
only
him
that,
try.
now
You could have him take him like, hey, here's have him try like a Krispy Kreme and see what happens.
now the one thing now we do see one section of their trip to the mall, and that's when they go to the Cineplex to see, of course, my personal favorite, the one the one Star Wars movie that holds a deep sentimental attachment to me, and that was, of course, Return of the Jedi. And I love their conversation during it when they say, well, the third one's always the worst. I'm sorry, Return of the Jedi is not the worst. That came in
I think I think
2017.
that was supposed to be. I think that was sorry. I think that was
It was
supposed
a
to be a jab at the Last Stand.
yes, it was, and I cannot say I disagree with it. I
Well,
cannot say I
can I
disagree.
throw this out there too? And we can't go off on Star Wars. We got to keep on track here. But
Yeah.
Jabba the Hutt may be, and I've been wanting the opportunity to say this in public, may be the greatest special effect of all time. That motherfucker looks real as fuck, even now. That's the greatest
Yes.
puppetry, puppet work. Jabba the Hutt looks
Well,
tremendous. Even in 2022, CGI can't beat that. He looks great. I just watched it the
well,
other
of
day.
course. Well, of course, because look at consider who constructed him. Jim Henson Studios. Just
Well, it
saying.
looks
If you
even
want
better.
it,
Is that his masterpiece?
no. I'll give you. I'm gonna just say the title of a movie, and if y'all get it, fine. If y'all don't get it, fine. The Dark Crystal.
Yeah, but
That's Jim
those
Henson.
things are cartoony. Jabba the Hutt fits in perfectly with
No, they are
you.
not. I'm sorry, they're not cartoony. I disagree
All right, all right.
because you got people that are actually inside those suits that are doing the puppetry for those characters, for the Skeksis season, for the Mystics.
There were people in
That
Jabba.
there were people in Jabba too. I'm not saying I'm not saying that Jabba isn't a great piece of puppetry. He is because it took several people to make him work. Not to mention you've got all the radio electronics for his eyes and
The
for his
eyes.
mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So yeah. Now kind of segueing back to Apocalypse.
Sorry.
No, no,
I had to say
yeah,
it.
no, it's fine. It's fine because it ties into the discussion.
What do you think of the costume though for Apocalypse? Have you guys discussed about this
Well,
before?
A little bit. Yeah.
we discussed that a little bit before you got in here. That was actually one of our first points when I was talking with
Can I
Zach. I
say
showed him.
I think Ferris will agree with me. So let me take this one first. So I think Ferris that they should have not really filmed him in full daylight. It's like you've got to frame him a little bit carefully when you're dealing with a guy who looks so bizarre and out of place. Show him in close-ups. Don't show him walking around in daylight. I don't know. I mean, it works a lot of the time with the close-ups, but when you see him walking around by himself, it's like, I'm not so sure. But I think it works, but it could have been done better.
Yeah.
Mainly when it comes to framing and lighting and the whole thing.
The design, and I mentioned this and everything before you came in, Ferris. The design for Apocalypse after they redid the color scheming for him was right on point. Was pitch perfect and everything in terms of his face design and the design of his armor and so on. It all worked. Everything. It was a perfect keeping with what we saw. Did he have the big cartoonish A on his waistline? No, he didn't. And that was okay because that would have looked cheap and would not have been in keeping with the rest of the design for everything else. Now, I did like the fact that they did come up with the hieroglyph that looked like an A, and it was on his armor and it was on some of the technology, particularly that big golden piece or anything that was inside his pyramid, both at the beginning and then towards the end of the film when he's reconstructing his pyramid. But and the fact now he didn't have the big tubes that came out of the back of his arms below his elbow went into his back, but he did have those kind of cables that were on top of that came out of the sides of his head and went down underneath the cowl and so on. So Apocalypse design for me was a good faithful adaptation everything of his more classic design. In terms of the Horsemen, again, was in keeping with how we've seen them previously. Everything now, and I mentioned this also before you came in, Ferris. The costuming was, in a lot of ways, an homage, particularly for Storm, with the very funky cape that you see her in her earlier designs in the comics. I did like the fact that she did have the white mohawk and everything. I liked that particular aspect, and they did keep the white hair and everything even after she renounced or she turned on Apocalypse, because that is a part of her design aesthetic. As far as Cyclops goes, I did like the fact that he wore Ray-Bans, but they were heavily altered Ray-Bans that had the ruby quartz and anything that was also in keeping with how he is able to suppress his powers and everything or control them so that he isn't blasting everything in sight. So
I'll just say this about when it comes to sorry, I'll just say this though about about Apocalypse design. I thought that I thought that the practical effects was really good. It's just that I thought he'll be much bigger, like Thanos size, like Hulk size, because that's kind of thing that kind of bothered me. Like he's like shorter than the rest of the other horsemen. That like when I picture him the first time I see him on screen, I thought the design was just okay. I mean, I've seen early concepts where we almost got like a comic book accurate Apocalypse, like like similar to Thanos, or to similar to or in DC is Darkseid. Again, Apocalypse is like the how I would say the Darkseid and Thanos to the X-Men world. I would say, because the thing is though, he's he's the first mutant. He's very much he's very intimidating, and I thought like the way like the design that they picked was just okay. But again, the size the size of the character, I think he should have been much bigger. We only got a glimpse of that like in the telepathic sequence, I would say, like between Xavier and Apocalypse. That was like the only time like we see him like go big. I would say, because he does have the ability to increase his size.
Yeah.
That's to me. Yeah. I think I don't know if you guys ever see the early concept arts. It was done by Ironhead Studios, who also did the costume for the second X-Men movie. They also did the costume for Batman Returns, and I think they also did costuming some other movies. I think they also did Spider-Man or another comic book movie. I kind of forgot about that.
Batman
but yeah,
Returns.
Yeah, Batman Returns. Yeah, the same. Yeah, Jose Fernandez. That's the name of the designer who he did the comic book accurate Apocalypse sculpt. But again, that didn't go into use. That didn't go into use by by the filmmakers. I mean that's kind of a bum to me. But again, if you check out like Ironhead Studios and the work of Jose Fernandez, they did like amazing jobs when it comes to designing the suit or designing the costume. They did the second X-Men movie. They did that. They also did Batman Returns. I recommend you guys check those out.
I definitely will, and thank you,
Oh,
Ferris.
Batman
Hey,
Returns. Huge fan. Yeah.
yeah, Ferris. You may or may not know this about Zach. Zach is one of the biggest Batman fans I've ever met, and that's I know quite a few and everything. And I'm a big Batman fan myself. So, and yes, Zach, I will agree with your assessment there. Darkseid looks like a CGI turd.
Yeah, I get what
Yes.
Ferris is saying. He's got to look a little bit more imposing, but Darkseid looked like trash. Thanos looked great. So I get exactly what he's saying, but Darkseid, I hated the way he looked, man. I hated it. Yeah, the Snyder Darkseid to me was just gross to look at.
To me, he's kind of bland. To me, he's like, as I described him, when I see Funko Pops of Darkseid, I'm like, oh, look, it's the bootleg. It's the bootleg um, garbage
Well, who
bin
played him? Do we
Thanos.
know who acted the part?
He was CGI character. He was
Well, that's our fucking problem. There's our problem right there. They put Josh Brolin as Thanos. You've got a good basis to work with it.
The actor's name was Ray Port, who did the voice of Darkseid.
It rings a bell, but hire somebody with a little bit more charisma.
Well, I don't know if I could agree with you.
Or maybe.
Sorry. I don't know if I agree with you of Darkseid. Darkseid looks kind of bland, but he does, represent, like the comic Darkseid. But again, I think maybe it could have been a little bit better. But he's only there for, for the setup for the second part or third part of the movie, which didn't happen at all. But I'll just say this though. I think they should have. But going back into Apocalypse, I think they should also put a bit of a motion capture too. Like you have that motion capture dot, you have the motion capture on the body too, like on the costuming.
Yeah,
A bit of
I'm
it.
wondering
But
why.
I do, at least mix practical with with CG.
Yeah, because they did it. Well, they did it for Thanos, but I mean Thanos was primarily CGI. I think a CGI Apocalypse would have been a lot better. But I will say this: despite his appearance, Oscar Isaacs, I think, did a really good job of portraying and encapsulating the character of Apocalypse and anything. Granted, he's not the most deep character per se, unless you really go into his backstory and everything, which is done in a limited run comic book called "The Rise of Apocalypse." I know it's a bit on the nose, but still.
I've read that before.
I have too. I used to own it. I had a massive, massive, massive comic book collection when I was growing up, and then I gave it all away like an idiot. I wish I never had. But Oscar Isaacs, I think, was a good fit for the character. He really brought, I think, a lot of weight to the performance, and they honestly, I think, I can't really think of another actor who could have they could have put in his place. I mean, if y'all had any recommendations for another actor to play Apocalypse, I'm all ears. But honestly, I think Oscar Isaacs, he did a good job.
Well, he's a fan of the character. That's the thing, though, because I read in an
Really?
interview. I read in an interview saying that his first comic book that he ever that he ever read was actually X Factor. You know, the OG5 X-Men, which they on a mission to fight Apocalypse or discovering, you know, the existence of Apocalypse. So when he heard that there is going to be an X-Men Apocalypse movie, like he said to his he said to his agent saying, "Hey, I want to be in that movie. Like, can you put me in that movie?" Like he got this role. But he not only that this is
Mhm.
was this is his first role in a comic book movie, but again he did Moon Knight later on.
Mhm.
I honestly don't know like which is
Yeah.
the best Marvel performance that he did, because like Chris Evans did Human Torch and Captain America, and now then we got, of course, Oscar Isaac becoming Apocalypse and Moon Knight. So both Fox went to Marvel. Then of course before that there was there was Michael B. Jordan from Human Torch to Eric Killmonger later on.
Yeah. And honestly, I have to say Oscar Isaac, he's I think a very underrated actor. Um I think his performance as Apocalypse and as Moon Knight, they were both right on. They were both on point and anything. Um he I think his interactions with Xavier were some of the best interactions in the film. Um honestly, his other interactions with the other horsemen, particularly Magneto, that was one of my I think one of my favorite interactions with between him and another character in the movie. Um, he has a very brief interaction with Mystique in the big fight at the end. I think if we had had a longer film or a two-parter, there could have been more interaction with him trying to track down Raven, trying to track down Mystique, and maybe potentially co-opting her to his cause, maybe as another horseman potentially.
I would like that. I would like that idea though, because that happens in X Men Evolution. Because in X Men Evolution, his horsemen are Xavier, Magneto, Storm, and Mystique. And
Mhm.
in the movie, you got Magneto and Storm, and I thought that they're gonna get Mystique too, because here's the thing that really bothers me about the movie. Here's the point. Here's one thing that I wanted to point out. The one thing that really bothers me about this movie is the fact that they really give the role of leadership of X-Men to Mystique, which is like all of a sudden, like she went from from being evil and then somehow to becoming a hero. I mean, I
Yeah,
think there are times like when Mystique becoming a hero. I mean, she's much like an anti-hero than just an actual, hero. I would say, because she's very much anti-hero, like to me, like in a way, like the way she was portrayed. But I think like if they want to go with the leadership role, I think like I wish they could have given the younger Scott Summers a leadership role, because I like the actor who portrayed him. Because I thought like
Mhm.
when they're doing an
Ty
Apocalypse movie, I thought they're
Ty
going for
Sheridan.
the X Factor route. Yeah, Ty Sheridan. I thought like when they're making an Apocalypse movie and they got the younger actors to portray like Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Storm, I thought they're gonna go for the X Factor route, where you got Angel in there too, and I thought maybe like have Angel be in the team, and then somehow it got adopted by one of the Horsemen, and then he becomes a Horseman too. I thought like that would have been like
Yeah.
the very cool route, like to show that these filmmakers do respect the source material. But then again, it kind of like
Mhm.
caught off guard or something like that. I mean, I was kind of
Well,
bummed at that place.
well, here's the thing that you have to understand about Angel's backstory and the X Factor team. The X Factor team is made up of the original five X-Men. That is, of course, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, Beast, and Angel. What happens to Angel is he loses his wings in the event called, or the crossover called, the Mutant Massacre, where his wings get destroyed. Anything by another mutant called Harpoon, who's a henchman of Mister Sinister. What they did with Angel in this movie, it works for them to be able to give him the metal wings. I think the one thing that I wish they could have done was give him the classic blue skin and everything. Because if you remember, now granted, they already had two characters in the movie, well, three actually, that already had blue skin, so I can kind of maybe understand why they didn't with Angel as well, or when he gets turned into Archangel, because you already have Beast, you already have Nightcrawler, and you already have Jean Grey, or not Jean Grey, but Mystique, and everything. Now, granted, she appears more as just in her um, normal appearance rather than her mutant appearance in the film. That was
What
partially due to the
what
fact that Jennifer Lawrence was getting kind of tired of doing.
Yeah, well,
would
let
have
me
been
throw
funny
this
if
out.
they
Is
sorry,
she had, well, I'm just gonna be real quick. She had really I mean, a pretty small amount of screen time in this film for her to be, propped up as this, major player. I mean, she had like 10 minutes.
Give or take, yeah. I mean, maybe 15 at the most.
Yeah, she was
So,
not a main character.
mm-mm. I mean, she was really a side character and everything. Now, if we had the two-parter, her part could have been expanded. Her story could have been expanded. I
You'd have
mean,
to pay her a fat
the
bag. Like you saw my tweet. She's been complaining for years about the makeup. I think
yeah,
I
and
think she was not a fan of doing this part.
well, if she wasn't, then she should have bowed out after Days of Future Past. They should have written it out where she gets killed or something at the end. Because if she was really that unhappy, then she should have said something. And
Well, I
honestly, I
like
think,
her. I like her. I like her personality. I like her as a person. I like her
mhm,
acting, but I just
yeah,
think the whole situation with the makeup did not jive with her, and that's fine. I can understand that.
yeah,
We've heard the horror
yeah,
stories of, Jim Carrey had to get CIA training to resist torture to be the
hmm,
Grinch.
hmm,
Uh, I get it, but when you're making 5 million, it's like suck it up, and you've got one of the great fan bases of all time and one of the
yeah.
most
I mean, because yeah,
and the films are iconic. So it's like, come on, suck it up, go and do the makeup. She was only in the makeup in like two or three scenes anyway.
yeah, and you know, they've always said that the first three movies at least were trying to save Raven from becoming Mystique, becoming the killer, becoming the real out and out villain that we saw in the original films. I mean, for heaven's sake, if Rebecca Romaine can suck it up and be in that makeup and everything and be kind of freezing her ass off at some points, then Jennifer Lawrence, guess what? So can you. And I will say this and everything. I like her as an actress. She's been in a lot of movies I really enjoyed. This is one of them. Um,
Yeah,
I
well,
really and
she's the real deal in terms of a Hollywood actress. Like, if you look at her in interviews and her talking, she's fucking hilarious. Like, she's a real person.
yeah, she is.
So she
She's
deserves. She's earned my respect. I'll say that. But I mean, get over it. Get over it. The X-Men people. How many fans do you think she's garnered from being in the X-Men films? Quite a
a
few.
lot. I mean, Mystique was was a side character really, but Brian Singer really brought that character into the forefront, particularly with the first two films. And then when they did the reboot and they brought her on, Jennifer Lawrence on as Mystique, and they really gave a lot of weight to the character, really made her more fleshed out. Now, granted, they've done a lot with her also in the cartoons and in the comics, but I think for a broader audience, even outside of the normal X-Men or even Marvel fan base, people really gravitate to the character because she always gave a good performance. Her character has been always very intriguing, and it's it's a uh, it's it's a credit to her ability as an actress and anything to play a character whose identity at times is as shift as can be as fluid as how she appears.
Well, she was given a good opportunity. The original actress transformed into the part. We didn't really know who that was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so they said, let's bring in a movie star to take over that part for the
Mm-hmm.
prequels. So she was given a great opportunity. and I don't know if she's really bitched all that much, but it's like I see this kind of stuff all the time from her, and it's like, come on, man.
I think she did at the time, but since then she's kind of moved on from it because it's in the past for her now. She doesn't really it's not really brought up in interviews all that much anymore. So, honestly, of of the characters in this film in X-Men Apocalypse, her performance, whether while it was brief, I did enjoy it. And I did like her speech or her monologue at the end and everything when she's getting ready to set them on their first training in the danger room. Um,
I
Forget
love
what
that
you
final
know.
scene.
I do too, and particularly when the fact that we see some of the some of the Sentinels and everything from Days of Future Past. It was a really cool scene. It was a really cool moment because, and I will say this, I love the sound effect for when Scott active or Cyclops activates his visor. That was very iconic for me as
I
well.
freaked out. I mean, come on, I'm a Cyclops fan, and I freaked out when
Mhm.
he
Yeah.
finally activates his visor. Finally,
Yeah.
like I kind of I don't know why the visor kind of like a bit bothered me a bit because he just like it's just sticked on your face, something like that. Kind of reminds me like when you put like when you put on like a Robin or Nightwing mask, like stick to your face and all that.
Yeah.
uh, I kind of I'm more into the the old school with the ear cover thing because that
Yeah.
that's my Cyclops back in the day. I mean,
Mhm.
I like the glasses and all, but you can't ever beat the OG with the with the ears covered. I mean, that to me is my Cyclops.
Well, I think what they were trying to do is try and give Cyclops more expression because if you realize, particularly in the first X Men, I do want to say hello to the chat real quick. My good friend Price is Right reviews. Price is good to see you. It's been a while, and hope I'm doing well. Hope you are. Hope you are too. I think what they were trying to do for Ty Sheridan was try and give him more expression because if you look at from X1 to X2, and X2 the visor is very very bulky. In X2 they really shrunk it down and everything and gave James Marsden a lot more expression in his face. And I think they were trying to do the same thing um, for Ty Sheridan. I think they've learned their lesson. They were trying to keep true to the design for the visor, but at the same time, they were trying to give Ty Sheridan more expression in his face, and I think you really do see that and everything in that sequence there, and even with the sunglasses. Yeah, and I will say this: I would love to have a pair of those Ray Bans because I just ever since Men in Black, I've always wanted a pair of Ray Bans, and the fact that they had him wearing Ray Bans in the movie for the with the glasses with the red lenses and anything was
Well,
really, really cool.
first three X, sorry about this. First three X-Men movies, Cyclops' glasses, sponsored by Oakley, but now in Apocalypse they're sponsored by Ray-Bans. And I don't know if you know about this because James Marsden got a lifetime supply of Ray-Bans after the first movie, which is like
Good
crazy.
for him.
It's a
Good
good
for
deal.
him. Yeah. Um, and I will say this.
Sorry, it's Oakley. I
No,
mean, the lifetime supply of Oakley.
Oakley's. Yeah, I got you. It's okay, Ferris.
Oh,
I
really?
caught what you were saying.
I'd go with the Ray Bans, man.
Ditto.
Well, they're classic. Yeah, they're classic, and I think that really fits him too. They have like this some kind of like extensive side blinder, I think, because you can't even see his
Yeah.
eyes. I mean,
Mhm.
it's all covered up.
Well, I'm talking practically. I
Yeah.
have
Well,
one pair. I have one pair of Ray Bans, and it's like that old school look. I feel like a detective when I put them on. I'm like, I
mhm.
can't fucking wear these in public.
Sure you
But I
can.
do like them. Yeah, I like the brands. I just got to get a different pair.
Yeah. Um, let me Ferris. Let me ask you this: how'd you feel about the sequence where they're at Alkali Lake? How did that whole sequence go for you? Do you feel it? Do you feel it was disjointed from the rest of the movie, or do you think it fit in okay?
The alkali, which part in the alkali lake in when they were when Cyclops,
In
Jean, and
Apocalypse,
Nightcrawler in?
in What'd you think of that whole sequence?
I thought, I thought that sequence was, was just okay. I mean, I love the fact that we got to know like three of the, not just Cyclops, Jean, and Nightcrawler like going around together like it's freaking X2 again. But my God, that
Mhm.
scene with with Hugh Jackman coming back as Wolverine with the comic accurate what was that called, like
Weapon X.
adamantium surgery, yeah, what the Weapon X look. Oh my God, like finally, like I've been waiting to see this coming to life in a reboot. But okay, this is a reboot with Hugh Jackman again. But you know what, it's worth, it's worth the watch. Okay, I would say. uh Glad to know that he got the comic accurate Weapon X look in Apocalypse. But again, when
Mhm.
it comes to X2, I know it's very Wolverine centric story, but finally, like
Yeah.
seeing this happen in a rebooted timeline, like, good God, yes, put me in.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of the same way myself. It felt kind of weird having Stryker come there to the mansion after it gets blown up. But at the same time, it does add some added tension. Of course, it does give us the cameo that we all that cameo scene that we all love, where we just see the pure animalistic, the pure weapon Wolverine, the Weapon X, and just him tearing people to pieces. And it's almost like the Vader scene from the end of Rogue One.
Well, do you really need Stryker for that scene though? Can't you just have some military guy? I mean, we've already got Danny Houston.
Honest,
We've got
yeah,
Brian Cox. Do we really need this mutt to take on the part? Just call him Colonel whatever, Colonel Ferris.
yeah.
Who cares? He doesn't need to be Stryker. It gets
No,
it, when you do so many cameos like this and you just keep retreading, it gets a little repetitive, and that really
it
is a
does.
danger. It's a danger. You can fall into that.
Yeah, I have to
Well,
agree.
I would say this though, the problem with Fox is that they didn't even have like their own, like, how I'd say this, like it's like their own Kevin Feige of the entire X-Men universe. I mean, yeah, DC, DC has James Gunn and Peter Safran now, and like MCU already has Kevin Feige, but X-Men, the producers are, um I don't know. Sometimes they keep changing, or something. I don't know, because like they don't even explore continuity issues, or something like that. Because if I look back at X-Men Origins, that film is like a really big cannibalism of continuity, I would say. It kind of like destroys some of the backstory and all that thing, because honestly though, X-Men Origins Wolverine should have been like a Wolverine war movie. I mean, just get him like in several war
There
wars, and
was
that's it.
there was
Yeah, and just ended with him getting adamantium, and boom, the end. That's kind of about it.
well, Ferris, were you and I here for the origins? I feel like I had this talk with you.
No, no, I haven't discussed
No, because
Origins.
the only thing I did for Origins was a watch along. Something got taken down by YouTube because YouTube is stupid.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I don't know. I mean,
So
I just think just seeing Stryker as a young man and making us feel like he's an
right,
old 65-year-old guy by X2, and he's still doing this shit with Wolverine. It's like, what? It's an unnecessary addition to the film, in my opinion. So you're talking about like what can we cut? We can cut him altogether, I think.
yeah, we could have cut Stryker entirely and just made it a random military officer and everything. I think the only
Or
reason they
just get,
had him
well,
back was
here's the other thing. So, sorry, is just
Mhm.
get Danny Houston, dye his hair black. You could have done that too.
Yeah, you could have. I mean, honestly, the actor that they had portraying Stryker in Days of Future Past, I think the only reason he made an appearance in Apocalypse maybe was because of a contract deal or something. Maybe I don't know honestly, but like I said before, I see that actor. I just see the punk and everything from Jack Reacher that gets his ass kicked by Jack Reacher, played by Tom Cruise. That's all I see. And
You're not
he
wrong on that though.
he's just he doesn't look like young Ryan Cox, and he doesn't look like a young Houston. What's the actor's first name?
Danny Houston. Savage character actor.
He doesn't look like either one of those actors.
Well,
Not
Ferris,
even close.
Ferris, let me ask you: Did you like Danny Houston as Stryker? I feel like that guy has a complete vibe to him in that movie. That's a great. I love that actor.
Yeah, I think like Danny Houston is a really good striker. Yet, like you said, he's kind of like creepy. I mean, just
Yeah.
like seeing him from the trailer when I first saw him, like we're gonna make you indestructible, become the animal. Like, oh my god, you could see the creepiness on his face. It's like he's gonna turn Logan into like a monster or something like that. Like that's totally like I could picture him like a young Brian Cox, like seeing him like making Logan's life miserable. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that is just creepy.
Well, Brian Cox is another one. He's this. We're talking about a guy who's been doing this forever, and he's finally now he's famous for his HBO Succession TV show. The man was Emmy nominated, and he's like 70 for the first time.
Yeah.
Well, Brian
let's be
Cox.
honest, Brian Cox is yeah.
Wow.
Brian Cox is a very solid actor. I mean, the first time I saw him in anything was the American adaptation of The Ring, and his portrayal in that movie was creepy as hell. The next time I saw him was as Agamemnon in Troy. I think honestly, a very underrated movie. I think is his.
Yeah. Oh, he's great in that, man.
I love him as Agamemnon. I do. And then when he shows up in X2 as Stryker, hell yes.
So his character
give me
Succession,
more.
He's playing a magnate. He is. I mean, this is his masterpiece show. If you want to play like a minute of this, you'll get a little taste of him.
Maybe in a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
So.
But he's great.
But
I mean, this guy is fucking great. Yeah. Love Brian Cox.
Now, the one character we haven't really discussed all that much is, of course, Xavier. And, James McAvoy doesn't miss a beat. I mean, his previous two performances as Xavier were top notch, and he was just as good in this, honestly. And I will say this: when him and Apocalypse are fighting inside Apocalypse's in that space, their two minds. He's like, "You want my power? You want to feel what I feel? You want to feel everything?" And he just goes and he just grabs Apocalypse's head. He's like, "You want it? Here, you can have all of it." And I'm like, that to me is like peak Xavier, peak young Xavier, and it is honestly. When Apocalypse is using him to do that broadcast or anything to everybody's mind around the world, and when Apocalypse says to destroy the weak, and Xavier says protect the weak, that right there was a great moment too, honestly. And you really see him as the mentor in this movie, as the professor, as the teacher. He's come out of his funk, out of Days of Future Past, and he's really stepped back up to the plate as the leader, as the teacher. And I love his interactions with the students in that one scene where Alex brings Scott to the school for the first time. So let's see. Price is Right says X-Men United is the only version of Stryker that I take seriously. Jean-Luc Picard owns the role of Professor X in my mind. Yeah, but James McAvoy's young Xavier, he kicks ass too. I do. James McAvoy, I think, was a great successor to Patrick Stewart's portrayal of
Well, but here's the problem: is you just can't beat McKellen and Patrick Stewart.
or
You just
Stewart.
can't. Yeah, you
That's true.
can't.
No, that's true.
Um,
But
but I
Fassbender
will
and,
say this too, though.
McAvoy,
Is
yeah,
another element of these prequels I like is you get to see the foundation of the friendship between these two guys, which is, by the way, the
yes,
first introduction to their relationship. Why would Professor X be going to visit this crazy guy locked up in prison? They were friends. That's the
they were friends.
foundation of that relationship. And it really shines in this movie and in the other prequels.
It does, yeah, very much so. And that's the thing that kills me about Dark Phoenix is Xavier does not behave in any way with
I haven't seen
how
it.
he behaves.
After I heard your review, I said, nope, not doing it.
Don't do, Zach, don't do it to yourself unless you just want to. Unless if you're going to
Yeah,
have,
I wouldn't
okay, all
recommend it
right,
either.
okay.
What if I get drunk and I'm, take morphine? Will I enjoy it then?
I wouldn't go that far. Maybe get a little bit tipsy. Do it like as okay. You know how people will have like bad nights where they'll get friends together and they'll watch a movie that they know
Oh
is
yeah,
bad, but
bad
they'll
movie
just
night.
like
Yeah.
do Dark Phoenix as a bad movie for bad movie night. Okay, I will tell you this: we don't even own a copy of it.
But you're saying I got to be fucked up to see it.
You don't have to be. I'm saying you don't have to be just like completely smashed. Have one or two drinks and then sit down and watch it, or have a couple of drinks while you're watching it. No, you don't have to be completely obliterated or smashed to watch the movie.
Okay. Yeah,
Anything.
I got you. Well, somehow I
Okay.
managed to enjoy Matrix 4.
Matrix 4 compared to Dark
I
Phoenix,
didn't
it's a
even watch that.
masterpiece.
Really?
Zach, you know how much I dislike Matrix Resurrections. You know how much you were here for that review. I'm
I
pretty sure you
was.
were at
I
least.
think I argued in
Yeah,
favor of it.
you did, and I respect you. I still respect you for it, and I still consider you a friend. Yes, dear.
I say this with sincerity. You need to be drunk to watch Dark Phoenix.
Thank you. Okay.
Man,
Well, there you
that's from
go.
Madam Ambassador. That's from Madam Ambassador. She's like,
I
y'all
like it.
heard it from your lips to her, from her lips to y'all's ears.
She gets where I'm coming
Dark.
from. I will
She
take that
does.
advice to
Yeah,
heart.
yeah, she does. Um, the Dark Phoenix Xavier was just so divorced from how he was portrayed, either by McAvoy in the previous three films or even by Sir Patrick Stewart in the first two films. We do not acknowledge Last Stand. It is not canon. I will say that till my dying day. Dark
Okay,
Phoenix
let
and
me
Last
hit you with.
Stand are not canon.
All right, guys, I'm about to break the podcast here. What would happen? What would happen if I said to you guys, let's replace those actors and let's put McAvoy as Magneto and let's put Fassbender as X?
What, swap the roles?
Yeah.
It wouldn't work.
Honestly,
It-
Michael Fassbender reminded me like if he's gonna be playing Lex Luthor or something.
Well, so the thing with McAvoy is, for me, he kind of was somewhat bland throughout all these movies, and I see him pop up in Split, where he's playing this crazy maniacal character. I'm like, that's a fucking Magneto.
You're thinking of McAvoy. McAvoy was in Split, not
Yeah,
Fassbender.
that's what I meant.
Okay. No, honestly, McAvoy was the right cast for Xavier, and Michael Fassbender. Michael Fassbender. The only other movie I've seen him in, I don't think I've ever seen him in another movie.
They're
Well, the
live.
first movie
Finally,
that I saw him was 300. Actually, yeah, I think that was like his first
oh,
movie
that's
appearance in
right.
Hollywood.
Yeah, that was his. I think he was one of the Spartans. Yeah, he was. I
I think he
forgot
was
about
also
that.
in Inglorious Bastards. I think was he in Inglorious Bastards? If I'm not mistaken, he was also in Inglorious Bastards.
Maybe. I think. Let me look up his IMDb. You two talk amongst yourselves, or talk with the chat, or whatever for a minute while I look this
He
up.
may he may have been in that, but I don't think he was a. Was he a main character?
No, I think he was
I
one of the
don't.
supporting characters.
Yeah, supporting guy. Yeah, that could be.
I mean, he started off as a supporting character. I mean, I think like if I'm not mistaken, like both McAvoy and Fassbender, they were both in the Band of Brothers series. If you ever watched it before, I mean, Tom Hardy was in it too.
I've,
I,
Yeah, that's old school, man. That's
let's see.
was
Hang on,
Ross
I'm
from
looking.
Friends in that too? Am I
Ross
imagining
from
that?
Friends
Yeah, yeah,
and
wasn't he?
Band of Brothers.
I think
Okay.
so. Yeah, wasn't he?
Okay. Okay. Here, I've got his IMDb up. I didn't know he was married to Alicia Vikander.
Oh yeah, he
Huh.
is. He is married to Alicia Vikander.
Huh. I'll be dipped. Oh my gosh, I had complete brain fart and I feel awful now because he's actually been in some stuff I like. I feel like an awful human being. I tell
What do
you.
you what do you
Okay.
got?
Hey,
What do we got?
okay. Okay, hang on. Let me what the son of a biscuit eating dog. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. He was in Prometheus. He was in Shame. He was in Steve Jobs. Um
Oh,
I think that was probably like after the First Class roles. I think because like before First Class, I only know him like in Inglorious
he was
Bastards
also in
and in yeah.
I'm gonna say Inglorious Bastards was like 2012. See if he's in that.
I'm
Maybe
trying
earlier
to
than
it's
that.
being
2010.
IMDb's being stupid.
Probably 2000, 2009, I think. Either 2009 or 2010. That was like probably the time where Fassbender was in Inglorious Bastards because
Yeah,
he was always been in the supporting
I'm pretty
role
sure it was
until he got his lead role.
Django was 2012.
Yes, Django was 2012. Again, those both are by Tarantino, of course, because he
Yeah,
probably
love.
like make movies in like what 3 years or something, 2 years, yeah, somewhere
Yeah,
between
man.
those
It,
times.
it takes him a while to come out with a movie for sure.
well, that's because Quentin Tarantino is a genius.
Well, he's got to write his own shit, which is different than like Scorsese, who is equally talented. So people just send him great scripts. He's like, I like this. Tarantino's got to take 2.5 years to fucking write it.
Okay. Okay, this is going all the way to 2019. He was in Dark Phoenix, The Snowman, Alien Covenant, Alien well Assassin's Creed, Trespasses Against
Oh
Us,
God.
X-Men Apocalypse, Take Flight, The New York Times, Steve Jobs. Hang on.
I feel bad for him hearing this. Go ahead.
Hang on.
He
he
deserves
was in
better than that.
he was in Macbeth. He was
Oh,
in Slow West, Days of Future Past, 12 Years a Slave, Prometheus, Pitch Black Heist, Haywire, Shame, Dangerous Method, X-Men First Class, Jane Eyre, uh, Man on a Motorcycle, Blood Creek. He was in Inglourious Bastards. You were both right. Fish Tank, The Devil's Mistress, Eden Lake, Hunger, Goldfish, Wedding Bells, something called Angel, Trial and Retribution, 300. Let's see, Hex, something called Hex was a TV series. Our Hidden Lives, another TV movie. Murphy's Law, another TV series. Sherlock Holmes in the Case of the Silk Stocking, another TV movie.
Oh God,
Let's see.
he deserves better than that. I think we've gone
And he
back
was
far
in.
enough.
He was also in Band of Brothers.
Would you
which
click
was
on
a-
Band of Brothers and see if that fucking Ross guy's in that? Ferris, I don't think believe me. I'm telling you, dude, he was in that. That dude.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah,
What
David
was that guy's-
Schwimmer and
Yeah,
David Schwimmer, that's the
yeah.
actor. Yeah.
See if he's in that. David Schwimmer.
Hang on. If he'll cooperate.
I don't think I've ever seen like David Schwimmer in other things beside Friends, except for that movie with Harrison Ford, 6 Days, 7 Nights. I enjoyed that movie back then.
The only person who really did great was Jennifer, dude, from that show. That was it.
Of course.
It's like Matthew Perry. The only other thing I've seen him in is Fallout.
Well, the last movie that I seen him was a comedy movie, 17 Again, with Zac Efron playing the younger version of Matthew Perry. I honestly cannot even picture that for real. I mean, young Matthew Perry looks way different than Zac Efron.
Well, he's in the Fallout game, Matthew Perry. Fallout New Vegas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I gotta go check that out.
All right, here is the cast list for Band of Brothers. And this is the actors' names, not the characters. Scott Grimes, Damian Lewis, actor I absolutely love. Ron Livingston, another actor I absolutely love. Shane Taylor, Donnie Wahlberg, Pierre Youngblood, Matthew Lech, Nicholas Aaron, Philip Bartini, Michael Kaluds, Dexter Fletcher, Rick Gomez, James Madlow, Ross McCall, Doug Allen, Michael Fassbender, Dale Dye, which you can't have a World War II movie with our show without Dale Dye.
No David Schwimmer? Dude, I'm telling you, he was in that.
You are, sir, are correct. He was in 3 episodes.
Oh, okay. All right. There we go. I'm not
Oh man, that's totally mind blowing. I probably gotta go check that out.
Here's another one. Tom Hardy was in 2 episodes of Band of Brothers, who went on to do, I think, a very good picture of Bane in The Dark Knight Rises.
Well, yeah, he's had a great career.
If I'm not mistaken, I think like Tom Hardy played the younger version of Jean-Luc Picard. I've seen pictures of it, but I don't know if they totally look like or not.
No, he played like a crazy prince. He was like the bad guy in Star Trek.
I thought he was playing the younger version of Jean-Luc.
No, he played a clone of Picard in Star Trek Nemesis that was created by the Romulans.
What? I thought he was like he was the bad guy.
He was a clone of Picard that had been created by the Romulans. They don't know why the Romulans created a clone of Picard, but they did.
Goofy as fuck. Now that I hear that, I like the movie even less.
Yeah, I like Nemesis. I thought it was good. I thought Tom Hardy was one of the strongest points of the movie. Honestly.
Well, you're a forgiving man. You're a forgiving guy. You know. Name a Star Trek. Yes, you are. Name a Star Trek movie you hate.
I can't because I don't necessarily hate them. They're just some that are less. Some of them are lesser quality than others.
Ferris, name a Star Trek movie you hate.
Oh God, I'm not sure which one to hate. Probably the one that what was that called? Wasn't William Shatner even directed one? People said that. People said that.
Yes, that was Star Trek V. Okay, Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. And okay, fair, Zach, I amend my previous statement. There is a Star Trek movie that I really dislike, but I don't hate.
Well, what about what's the one with Shatner and Picard?
Oh,
Generations. That one fucking sucked.
Oh my gosh.
It was kind of off for me.
That I don't hate it. It just makes me very, very sad. No, there is a Star Trek movie that I dislike because it had such potential and then it just got completely snuffed out. And that was Star Trek Beyond.
Oh
I
yeah,
thought
for
Into
sure.
Darkness was the worst out of all. I mean, out of the
No,
new series. I mean,
here's the thing. The only part about Star Trek Into Darkness I really dislike is the ending where they swap who dies, and then they have the cheat where Kirk doesn't even die because they take some of Khan's blood and inject it into him, and he gets all better. He gets healed from the radiation exposure. But okay, um, now honestly, there is not a Star Trek film that I dislike, but or like categorically hate. Okay, there's only 3 movies in my entire life that I would regard as something that I actually hate in terms of a movie. Okay, 4. And we've already mentioned 2 of them here tonight. And that's, of course, X-Men Last Stand and X-Men Dark Phoenix. I hate those movies because they completely waste characters that I have grown to love, that I developed a connection to on a fan level, and even to a degree on an emotional level.
they should have stick with Brian Singer's original plan for X3, and yet somehow they just throw it out of the window.
Yeah, because they're idiots. Because at that time, Country Fox didn't know what they were, just wanting to wrap up the X-Men franchise. I'm like, why? You could keep going. You could have
Well,
totally kept going with this franchise.
to
Go ahead,
quote
Zach.
Mark
Sorry.
to quote Mark Hamill, it doesn't matter if it's good, only that it makes money. That's all that matters.
Well,
Which is not his opinion. That's his quote of how
no, I can
that's how the executives think.
think no,
They don't
yeah.
give a fuck if it's good.
Well, I would say
Well, I
that mentality has changed somewhat. Go ahead, Ferris.
Yeah, so I was gonna say something about this though. Not only that, Brian Singer, had a story, but had a story for X3. I mean, with his writers, but somehow, like when Matthew Vaughn, I mean, before Brett Ratner, okay, that the dude who directs the 3 Rush Hour movies, took over directing. uh, Matthew Vaughn was actually, going to direct X3. I thought that would have been cool, honestly. And
Yeah,
again, yeah, and the reason he already cast Kelsey Grammer as Beast. He already cast Vinnie Jones as Juggernaut. But then like somehow he wanted the film to be released like about at least in a late 2006 or maybe around summer 2007, but somehow Fox, being the people who needed money, just said, screw you, we're getting another people, we're going to stick to the script, and let's just or wrap this up. And that where the continuity error happens with the whole flashback scene. You know what, that flashback scene, looking back at it now at Last Stand, it really made me laugh.
Well, these meetings are creepy
it made my
meetings to
head
be a
hurt.
part of. Yeah, these when you get together and meet with big studios, I've only met with one, and it's just a creepy vibe because they're basically giving their opinions as orders. You're not allowed to fuck with them. You're not allowed to question them. Of course, my shit did not get made, but that's because they wanted to do all this weird shit, and they didn't want it. Um, that's probably what happened when you meet with the heads of the studio and the people who make the choices. They give you creepy feedback. It's like, do you want it or not? It's like, well, do this and that and this and this and this. So Brian Singer probably was a guy who wanted creative control, or was it Vaughn who you were talking about? Whoever you were talking about, they probably wanted creative control and they were giving him marching orders.
Well, Matthew Vaughn was going to be the original director, and then they brought in Brett Ratner. And I will say this: I liked the Rush Hour films. I thought Brett Ratner did a good job with those films. I mean, they're supposed to be goofy. They're supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be a buddy comedy vibe with Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. I laugh my ass off. I laugh my ass off when I watch those movies. But Brett Ratner doing an X-Men film, doing a comic book movie, no, it did not work. And obviously it didn't work because people panned that movie across the board. And, as we've mentioned already tonight, this should have been, except for Logan, in terms of the ensemble movies, this should have been the last entry before they did Logan. They did not need Dark Phoenix at all. Dark Phoenix should have never been greenlit. It should have never been made. It should have never seen the light of day, even if it was made. It should have been kept in a vault somewhere and never touched, ever. And then you end on a beautiful, powerful, strong note of that which is, and that should have been the end. So,
I agree with you with one thing though, because they never should have stopped like the X-Men franchise. I mean, you can have like at least like I did say this on your Marvel stream before. I mean, you have the prequel trilogy, you have the original trilogy, and you could have like a sequel trilogy for the X-Men. It's kind of like Star Wars. I mean, I don't care if it's good or not, because like you have rich stories, many good stories in the X-Men comics that could still be adapted in the movie. I mean, you have like the Inferno stories with Cable as Cyclops and Madeline Pryor. I mean, I would have loved to have a live action take on that. I mean, we got Josh Brolin, as Cable, and I thought that like if they have like a Cable movie exploring the backstory of his character with the X-Men Inferno comic, that would have been cool. I mean, you could at least have spin-off movies, like for God's sake. I mean, you already got like three Wolverine movies. You got Origin, you got the Wolverine, you got Logan, and you could also have like a Magneto movie. I mean, did you guys know that they were gonna make a Magneto movie?
But do we need it though? Do we need that? Does that make sense?
Not really.
Like I feel like I've seen this, been there, done that. I think these studios should do new shit and explore new characters and start from scratch. I
agree. And speaking of new characters that they did explore, and I might do this, might be a couple months down the road. You talk about spin-offs, Ferris. Deadpool.
Yes. Yeah, X-Men spin-offs. Deadpool's a good example. Yeah. Deadpool's a good example.
It worked.
I feel like we've done that too. We've had two of them. I mean, it's like, how many Deadpools do we want, guys?
Well, it all depends, though. I mean, we could make a trilogy. We could make a trilogy. I mean, trilogies are okay.
I think that's their plan. I think Deadpool 3 is going to be the third one before he gets folded into the MCU. And of course, we've got Hugh Jackman coming back as Wolverine, and I will say I love that trailer. I absolutely love that, or that announcement when you've got Ryan Reynolds just sitting there talking to the camera, talking to the audience, and you see Hugh Jackman walking in the background. He's like, "Hey, Hugh, you want to come back and play Wolverine again?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I loved that. Just absolutely cracked me up. I mean, I saw the first Deadpool. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved Ryan Reynolds as the character. I have not watched Deadpool 2, but I have it on Blu-ray. I'm going to eventually watch it. I've still got to watch Logan before tomorrow night because we're going to be covering Logan tomorrow night.
Well, let me throw this out there too. If I took over Marvel, what I would do is establish an animation division on my first day. And what we would do is do direct adaptations of famous comic book stories and do it right, and have amazing animation. I would love get the right voice actors, do the whole nine, and really pay careful attention to this division. I think that would be more in tune with what I would do. It's like we've had Hugh Jackman in 10 movies, some crazy number of movies. I love Hugh Jackman. I like him a lot. but it's like let's go with comic accurate and just convert some of these comics into animation.
I'll give you 4 right off the bat that I would love to see them do that with if they ever decide to, and I hope they do. Ferris, you mentioned Inferno. Just do a animated adaptation of that. Fatal Executioner Song and Days of Future Present, because they actually did a sequel to Days of Future Past called Days of Future Present, which deals with not just the X-Men, but also the Fantastic Four and Franklin Richards. And Zach, if you don't know who that is, I'll give you a brief. Essentially, Franklin Richards is the son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman.
Yeah, well, you could do them too. Maybe that's where we would start with that animation division. Do the Fantastic Four and do it right.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, guys, we're gonna do final thoughts, and then we'll call it an evening because we're coming up on 2.5 hours. Great discussion all the way around, and I want to thank both of you for being here tonight. I want to thank the chat for everybody that's been in here who wasn't here and everything. But Zach,
no
Ferris,
Brian
I'll let
Cox.
you have your final thoughts.
No Brian Cox scene from Succession.
I guess. Hold on.
Okay.
You're being a pest about it. All right, hold on.
Well, be careful. You don't want to get copyright for this thing.
That's true. Yeah, that is true.
Well, we're playing it at the end, so I can always crop it out. And it's only 4.5 minutes. It's not like the one that we watched back a few months ago that got us.
Oh, that was
booped,
so cool, though. That was so awesome.
Oh, that animated piece of Fall of House of Usher, yeah.
That was
so
fucking
yeah,
awesome.
That was really cool. Yeah, it was. So, all right, hang on, guys. All right, share audio, Chrome. All right.
So, do you guys have any plans on watching this show, by the way?
I don't have HBO Max right now, so probably not. So any spoilers is not going to be a big deal for me. So
Ferris?
Okay.
We can stop.
Well, if it's good, I'll go check it out.
Blow this up.
This is a big deal scene. So maybe take your headphones out, Ferris, for this if you're going to watch it.
Already, and we can get
They're playing toy soldiers. Go on. Fuck off. I have you beat. You morons.
well. No, because you need a supermajority. And
well,
only
no, because I mean the supermajority. What do you mean? Is she still on?
It's all done.
Can we get her back on?
Dad, what is this?
Holy
Yeah.
cow.
Hello,
Yeah.
Caroline. You're on with Roman, Kendall, and Siobhan.
Hi, Mom. Mom?
All right, well, I don't necessarily want to do any more tonight, Logan.
Your mother and I have been reviewing the terms of the divorce agreement.
Mom, you fucked us.
And we've agreed that the arrangements were a little antiquated.
Oh, fuck. Mom, he got to you.
Oh, seriously, Mom, already? The fuck did you...
I can't get into it, all right? I think...
Okay, I got to pause right here. For one, that way we won't get any trouble. But two, oh my freaking gosh. Brian Cox is a beast. Brian Cox is a freaking beast.
I'm speechless, dude.
He's got what they would call BDE. Zach, I think you know what that means, Ferris. I'm pretty sure you know what that means too. He's got BDE in this scene. He is a badass. Holy
Okay, so
crap.
his character, all right,
Okay.
his character is like a Rupert Murdoch. This guy is in charge of this like $50 billion family. So you've got 3 seasons. 3 seasons of Brian Cox, and you've got his children are trying to take his fucking business from him, and he's like a savage. So this is like I
okay.
said,
All
this show is Brian Cox's greatest piece of acting he will ever do, ever. Yeah, this is his masterpiece.
All right, let's watch a few more minutes of it and everything.
Yeah,
and pull it down
sure.
because it's like I said, I
Let's
don't want to
do
get in
it.
trouble. But dang, I'm a minute and a half. But damn. Oh, come on.
Mom, you just slid our throats.
Please don't be angry. I think this is for the best. Peter's so excited.
Oh, is he? Peter's excited. Great.
I'm not sure it's been good for you, or you know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I love you all. Bye.
We just walked in on Mom and Dad fucking us.
Thank you, Caroline.
Check and freaking mate. Man, the daughter is pissed. Ooh, I love it. You thought you were going to get mommy to turn on dad, even though they're divorced, and you were completely wrong, and you just got completely owned.
Ambassador,
Oh
the other
man, I
scene
love this.
I put another scene in the chat of Brian Cox, so we can do this one after
might
this
watch-
if you want.
We'll watch it when we go after we go off air. I don't want to
Okay.
I don't want to push it too much. But dang, I'm loving it. Damn.
This is him
Damn.
as he's the main character in this. Like he's getting his chance to fucking shine. A Shakespearean actor. Like this is his moment. Nominated for an Emmy and an Oscar for this part.
Good for him. Truly good for him. Okay. Let's carry on.
Dad, please.
Please?
Please.
The seat sniffer gets a fucking leg up.
The dark-haired son, is that Kieran Culkin?
It is, yeah. Macaulay's
Okay,
brother.
Your brother. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I really
Thought
gotta
he looked
watch
familiar.
that.
That's the deal. What have you got in your fucking hand?
What have I got? I don't know. Fucking love?
You come for me with love. You bust in here, guns in hand, and now you find they've turned to fucking sausages. You talk about love?
I love this. This is three.
You should have trusted me.
This is 3 spoiled ass kids getting their asses spanked by their daddy. Love it. I love it. Sure, okay, we're still alive. Okay. Oh man, I am loving this. They should have made him Apocalypse because he's raining down fire and brimstone on their heads.
I can't believe you actually say that. I mean, yeah, for a Shakespearean actor, yeah, why the hell not?
Because it works. I fucking win. Oh, go on, fuck off, you nosy fucking pedestrians. Hey.
Damn.
All right, that's it. So stop it there. Stop it there.
Oh my
Stop.
god,
Stop it.
the way he just walked off. I mean, they should have played like the Dr. Dre Snoop Dogg song the next episode. Bum 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 bum
I
bum
had
bum
to
bum
stop
bum.
it.
I love that.
So what lies after that is one of the greatest plot twists in the entire series. I had to save you guys from that.
Okay.
Don't watch it. Turn that shit off.
I love that.
Can we do one more thing, man? I'm so sorry, guys. Can we do let's do the Succession intro. Okay, Succession intro HBO. This will sell you on it.
Okay. Just put
You want me to you want me to put the link? Okay.
Yeah, just put in the private chat.
I will. And then we'll
Honestly,
get the fuck
though,
out of here.
oh my god, honestly though, that scene where he just walked off, then I win. It's like, oh my god, They should have played, you know, they should have immediately played the Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg song in the background. Because that is gangster. Like, I don't know if it's called Gangster in the Family or something,
It
but you
is
know what? It sounds gangster.
no,
Oh my god.
old school. That's old school mobster. Like,
Are you talking about the one that goes, "Damn, it feels good to be a gangster"? That one?
No,
no,
it's the,
no.
I'm talking about the next episode, you know, rap
Oh
song
yeah,
by
yeah,
Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, you know, with
yeah.
the whole glasses on thing. Oh my god. That
Yeah,
becomes a meme.
with the piano, right? With the piano opening.
Yeah, with the
On the
keyboard
screen,
opening, I
guys.
would say.
Yeah, that's badass.
Is it up on the screen, guys?
It's kind of loading.
Yeah, it's loading.
Alan Rook's in this?
Yes.
Oh man.
This is good, man. You should watch this.
You know what this intro reminds me a little bit of? Falcon Crest. Do you remember that one, Zach?
What is it?
This intro reminds me a little bit of Falcon Crest.
I
Do you
have
remember
not
that
seen
one?
that.
It was like
Nuh-uh.
it was kind of like a nighttime soap like Dallas.
Mm.
I think it was the one with John Forsythe.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I think.
Yeah, that rings,
I think
that
if I'm
rings a
thinking of the
bell.
right show. Okay. Hmm. Okay, well, we had the stream on a very strong note. Not that it has been a bad stream by any stretch. So, well, Zach, thank you for some Brian Cox excellence. As
Watch
always.
it. Watch it. I'll fucking review it with you.
I gotta get a subscription back to HBO Max first before I can do that. So, but anyways, folks, okay, we're gonna do final thoughts on the apocalypse, and then we'll wrap up for the night. So, Zach, Ferris, I'll let you guys say your thing, and then I'll do mine. Then we'll call it the night.
Okay, so I'll go first. Honestly, though, X-Men Apocalypse, even though I enjoy, you know, the plot of where it's going, I think, you know, I've said this before, this movie should have been like a two-part so we could get more, you know, Apocalypse and more of the X-Men, and I think that would have been, you know, that would have been great to at least explore more than just, you know, trying to make a one cohesive movie. You know, because Apocalypse is a big villain in the Marvel universe and even in the for the X-Men. But so far, you know, the casts are great. I like the characters, and I think, you know, and I think like if they like expanded more with making it a two-part, it would have been, you know, a very interesting movie. I mean, that's to me though.
Okay. Yeah, I would second a lot of what Ferris has said throughout the podcast. Very smart guy. I would recommend that the Ambassadorial Wing audience go over and check out Ferris's Geek World. Yeah, very smart guy. I totally agree. The two-part point was probably the best point made during the podcast, and I think Ambassador and I really took to that. So I totally agree. My conclusion on the film is short and sweet. I mean, basically, it's a good, enjoyable, and yet flawed film.
For me, my final thoughts on it, this is where the X-Men ensemble films should have ended. This would have been a nice cap on the series of films. I think Dark Phoenix was a complete and utter mistake. It should have never been made. It should have never seen the light of day. Because it soured the journeys of so many characters. Whereas this film, it very much put a nice bow on so many journeys and could have left it open for further exploration, or it could have been the finale for the reboot trilogy, honestly, which should have been just a trilogy rather than a quadrilogy. So, but I enjoyed it when I saw it back in the day. I enjoy it still. It has some of my favorite performances. It has my favorite villain amongst the entire rogues gallery of the X-Men universe, not to mention the Marvel universe. And Oscar Isaac, I think, gave a very solid performance. So, as I mentioned in my short yesterday, we will be back tomorrow night, or I'll be back tomorrow night. For whoever else wants to join me can do so. As always, I'll have the link in the chat, and we'll be wrapping up the X-Men film series with, honestly, I think it's one of the strongest entries, and that is, of course, Logan. So I do want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. Of course, if you catch us on the replay, leave your comments down below with anything me, Zach, or Ferris brought up this evening. And if you do come across this and you're not already subscribed to the Ambassador Wing, we are closing in on 500. We are 10 away. So let's get to that 500 so we can have a big old blowout celebration for that milestone and move on forwards to 1K subs. So, but you all have a wonderful evening. We will see you tomorrow night. Stay ambassadorial. And until next time, these are the ambassadors. Signing off.